SpongeBob SquarePants. Possibly the most famous cartoon ever. I was in middle school when SpongeBob first came out, and was instantly smitten. It quickly became my favorite show at the time, for just how funny it was and how fresh it felt. Of course, not all things last, and eventually my interest waned sometime around 2003, before the third season fully wrapped up. By the time I saw the SpongeBob SquarePants movie advertised, I was a little curious, but had kind of moved on from caring at that point. That said, I've always looked back on the early SpongeBob seasons with appreciation. They made me laugh a lot back then, and I even kept a notebook with trivia I'd write down about each episode. Shocker, I know. Over the last decade, I revisited a few of my favorite episodes every now and then, only to realize some do still make me laugh today, while others decidedly do not. Here and now, I'm going to revisit all 117 episodes of the first 3 seasons of SpongeBob SquarePants, usually referred to as the Golden Age, and rank them from worst to best. I know some people consider Season 4 part of the Golden Age. I don't, so I won't be talking about it further. Keep in mind, I haven't seen most of these episodes in well over a decade, but I know it'll be fun reliving something that meant so much to me growing up that I can still enjoy today. It's worth clarifying that above all, I watch and enjoy SpongeBob for the humor and character interactions, which played a big part in how I ranked them. But a creative premise can do wonders too. Humor's of course subjective, so something I did or didn't find funny might dramatically differ for you, and that's totally cool. Enjoy the things you like, laugh at what you want, and let's celebrate the golden age of SpongeBob while sharing our thoughts about it. The SpongeBob SquarePants movie will of course not be included in this ranking, but I have now seen it, and to my surprise, really enjoyed it. It had a lot of funny moments and lines, and presented a wonderful conclusion to SpongeBob's story, and I like seeing it as that. I know many more seasons and episodes of SpongeBob exist beyond Season 3, but I'll only be looking at the classics today for nostalgic appreciation and laughs. That's not to say this is going to be all rose-tinted glasses though. Even back when these seasons were fresh, not every episode struck a chord with me. So buckle up, because I'm no stranger to hot takes, and I honestly do not know how other people feel about most of these episodes. So, with all of that out of the way, please be aware this is my personal opinion, and to expect full spoilers for the first 3 seasons of SpongeBob SquarePants. Here we go. As we rise through the episodic hierarchy, we'll be starting at rock bottom. And don't worry, I don't mean the episode. So here's the big question. Which is it? Of all 117 episodes of SpongeBob's first 3 seasons, which one is so bad, so hopeless as to land as the worst of the worst? Number 117, Krabby Land. Goodness gracious, I couldn't wait for this episode to be over. Mr. Krabs creates a slapdash playground to scam children out of money at the Krusty Krab, getting SpongeBob to entertain them, who chooses self-torture, and ultimately disappointing the kids with a cheap Krabby the Clown at the end. An unlikable time on all fronts, Krabby Land's humorless and painful to sit through. SpongeBob mutilating himself in all sorts of ways to their demented little minds' enjoyment, and Mr. Krabs so flanderized in cheapness at this point, he's just completely irredeemable, showing not a care for anyone else's well-being. We get it, he likes money. It doesn't need to be everything he's about, and this is only 2 episodes after Born Again Krabs, which already makes the same point. Mr. Krabs doesn't have a lot of good episodes, but can still be a pretty entertaining character. But you have to balance him. You can't just max out his stinginess stat at the expense of everything else. It doesn't take long until he's downright deplorable. Krabby Land just feels off in both its writing and desperate sense of humor, like it's going through the motions of zaniness and how characters are supposed to act. But it's way too over the top, so it just falls flat, amounting to an unpleasant 11 minutes of misery, mostly at SpongeBob's expense. Mean-spirited and hateful. Flush it down. I tried my best to find its funniest moment, and this is all I got. Krabby Land! Number 116, Dumped. Abysmal? One of the worst episodes of the Golden Age. I effing hated this one. Gary starts hanging out with Patrick and doesn't want to go back to SpongeBob, so SpongeBob tries getting some new pets that don't work out, all while being very sad he's lost his pet. It's almost void of humor. Wait until you see what I picked for the funniest moment. A depressing, no fun story with miserable scene after miserable scene. Patrick's steel-headed smugness because Gary likes him sucks. The new pets who act uncaring and mean suck. And all to end on the most unsatisfying twist ever. Gary was only hanging out with Patrick because he had a cookie in his back pocket. Brain-meltingly stupid. And I'm sure the writers thought this was a laugh. What a waste of time. Dumped offers nothing. Bad vibes, a dumb story, and not a good joke to be found. That only serves to make Gary and Patrick unlikable.
What's wrong with me? Do I offend?
Yeah, that's it. Number 115, The Great Snail Race. Unbearable. Back again already, huh, Gary? It's not gonna get much better for you, is it? SpongeBob enters Gary into a snail race to beat Squidward's new purebred snail, Snelly, but he pushes him way too hard, only for Gary to completely crash out during the race. Where do I start? SpongeBob possibly at his most insufferable in the Golden Age, just supremely unlikable for how he treats Gary. All just to show up Squidward of all people? I can't stand the stereotypical coach persona he adopts either. And I don't buy Squidward adopting a snail. And why exactly? Just to win a race? I know he's desperate for success, but this is a stretch. Is Snelly ever even shown again? Owned by him, I mean. Why is no one else participating in this contest? It's literally just the three main characters, one of which brought a rock. Stuff like this makes the world feel small. Watching Gary break down from overexertion's uncomfortable when it happens, and feels like needlessly gruesome torture to him. Like, he's a pet. Did the writers not realize this isn't funny? Not to mention the mean things Squidward says about him. All this stuff contributes to an off-putting energy present throughout the whole episode, and it only has a few small funny moments. At least Sandy kicks SpongeBob into the sky at the end for his earlier demeaning comments about women. It's the best thing she does in the entire third season, and shows just how little the Great Snail Race offers in the end.
Hey, what are you standing on anyway?
Number 114, The Sponge Who Could Fly.
Well, I guess the lost episode will remain lost.
Promise me that. Of all the episodes to celebrate as a lost episode like it's something special, they chose one of the worst in the Golden Age. SpongeBob, wanting to fly like the jellyfish, tries different ways to achieve flight, only to get ridiculed by others. Eventually, he puffs up his pants with hot air and manages to fly, only then for everyone else to take complete advantage. It's like they're trying to write an unlikable episode. These self-centered bikini bottom goers can suck eggs. They show no care for SpongeBob at any point, only concerned with their own unwarranted demands after making fun of him earlier. And even in the end, when he just wants to go to Jellyfish Fields, they pointlessly destroy his ability to fly, when all he's done is help them. And then they don't even care if he's okay. At least the jellyfish help him fly in the end, so it's not completely miserable, but man, way to tank the reputations of the entire underwater populace in an instant. And this is a stupid premise on top of that, without much of a story. There's something about how it's written and paced that feels very disingenuous. Like, I get the feeling the creators themselves weren't all that confident in this episode. There's barely anything to laugh at, and despite some memorable lines, the musical numbers feel forced. Patchy the Pirate bookends this one, and his angry reaction to the SpongeBob walk cycle's pretty much my reaction to the actual episode. In fact, the walk cycle animation's better. At least it's got a nice beat. Patchy's segments are often cringy, but this is actually my favorite one, because I like his "that's it" reaction that bodacious gamers snarkily react to Nintendo Directs with, but also his subsequent denial of all things SpongeBob's funny for how over the top it is, and we even get it in reverse. It's a fun gag, but as a supposed special, The Sponge Who Could Fly's kind of a disaster. A dumb story that isn't funny and feels made by people who only understand the series on a surface level. SpongeBob not knowing the cashier when they made it very clear he does in Party Pooper Pants, Mrs. Puff's pet snail, who's clearly just Snelly from the Great Snail Race. Whether episodes were moved around or not, stuff like this just feels lazy. I can't care about what's going on when it doesn't seem like the creators do. The Sponge Who Could Fly is a waste of a double-length episode and just plain sucks.
That's it? That's the lost episode?
That was just a bunch of cheap walk cycles!
Number 113, Squirrel Jokes. A rather obviously bad episode, SpongeBob makes squirrel jokes during a comedy show to make the audience laugh at Sandy's expense, coloring their perception of her and hurting her feelings in the process. Making fun of people is the punchline of this one. The fact that Sandy's so supportive of SpongeBob when he's bombing on stage makes it sting even more that he says these things about her, which are just mean-spirited, resulting in an episode barren of good humor. Eventually, Sandy plays into the dumb persona SpongeBob's crafted for her at his expense, so he changes his act to start making fun of everyone instead of just squirrels. I can appreciate the equality of teasing everyone instead of just her, but why do we gotta make fun of people at all to be funny? Are the citizens of Bikini Bottom really such deplorable a-holes? I guess the last one proved that already. Either way, I don't care for the vibes. The Sandy beatdown and people picking on her is just mean bullying, and permeates the whole story for a straight-up bad time.
Chop them up into slices, but
Number 112, I'm with Stupid. Patrick at his least likable in the entire Golden Age. Worried about his parents thinking he's dumb, Patrick gets SpongeBob's help, who offers to act stupid on purpose so Patrick looks smarter in comparison. Another overtly mean-spirited episode. The first half's just spent on SpongeBob acting like an idiot, while the second half sees Patrick completely lose himself to the idea that SpongeBob really is dumb, saying especially hurtful things about his appearance and behavior. It's enough to make you hate the character, at least for this episode. And even worse is SpongeBob doesn't even get to vindicate himself, since Patrick's quote-unquote parents don't believe him when he comes clean, making it even more frustrating to watch. I guess the twist ending revealing that these two weren't really Patrick's parents because they're the dumb ones, supposed to be their humiliation, which is true to a degree, but that's nowhere near satisfying enough to balance out being total a-holes beforehand. Patrick mistook them as well, so he also looks like an idiot. And with his real parents here now, and no SpongeBob to play dumb, we could assume his meeting with them doesn't work out like he originally feared. But again, not a fulfilling way to round out the story after he was being a completely insensitive jackass. I know they're trying to play this for laughs, but like, SpongeBob should never have talked to him again after this, especially since he was only acting this way to help Patrick, whose personality here has changed from lovably dumb goober to shamefully loathsome jerk. I'm with Stupid, unsurprisingly, doesn't offer a lot of good humor, since most of it's malicious. But it's a real shame the writers leaned into that, since I think a story surrounding a visit from Patrick's parents has a lot of potential. Too bad this is what it was used for.
Dumb people are always blissfully unaware of how dumb they really are.
Number 111, Ugh. Before comedy indeed. Ugh's a prehistoric-themed episode showing SpongeGar, Patar, and Squog discovering fire in the distant past, only to squabble over it and lose it altogether. Considering this one's themed around cavemen, I guess I shouldn't be all that surprised the story and humor here is equally as dumbed down. Most of the runtime spent on caveman barking, physical slapstick, and characters just being stupid, which is rarely funny and pointlessly dragged out as a double-length episode. Patchy the Pirate's littered throughout this one too, as usual to pad the runtime. But I will say this is one of his better segments, with a few amusing bits, but still ultimately obnoxious. The ending song When Worlds Collide's atrocious, and a really poor way for the episode to go out. It's interesting to see which storylines the writers felt worth adapting to double length, but in the Golden Age at least, it never seems like they had enough material to justify the increased runtime, and the patchy segments only prove that. Ugh's aptly named for how it makes the audience feel. It's just dim-witted nonsense that goes on for longer than it needs to, and barely does anything with the concept of seeing SpongeBob's world in the past. Wouldn't that be the whole appeal of doing this? Whatever, this quote-unquote special's not at all worth it. Number 110, the camping episode. Alright, let's get into this. I only recently learned that people actually like this episode, and I don't get it. To me, this is one of the most tepid, unspecial episodes of the Golden Age, hence it already showing up, so let me explain. SpongeBob, Patrick, and Squidward camp outside their homes. Squidward just to prove he's more cut out to camp than they are, pushing things too far and getting beaten senseless by a sea bear. Wow, they're really knocking me out with that plotline. fine. A bare-bones premise can still get a lot of humor with tight, funny writing, but that's not at all what we got here. The trio's bickering just feels so uninspired. Squidward against the other two just for the sake of it, because that's how it goes, but his participation here feels more forced than ever. It's just so passionless. The only two memorable things about this episode are the campfire song and the sea bear. The song itself thankfully isn't long, since it's pretty abrasive, and catchy in the worst way. I guess the joke's how on the nose it is being about camping, but that doesn't mean I like listening to it. The sea bear's when the episode truly plummets though, turning into Squidward getting beaten up over and over, which isn't funny. Or really even that deserved, whether he was a jerk before or not. Good for you if you like this episode, enjoy, have a blast, but it feels so generic to me, in both the interactions and punchlines. I think a camping setup has a lot of potential, but the result doesn't offer much, and several jokes are the boring, it's funny cause it's drawn out jokes you get a lot in season 1. So yeah, this might end up being my most controversial take in the ranking, but I'm not at all impressed. The camping episode barely manages a chuckle and just feels phoned in.
Write that down, write that down!
Number 109, Snowball Effect. Snooze. Who signed off on this one? Snowball Effect's one of the most lacking concepts for an episode in the entire Golden Age. SpongeBob and Patrick have a snowball fight, and Squidward gets involved. That's it, huh? Honestly, that's not so different from the campfire episode. As a simple premise with comedic potential that completely fails to do anything funny with it. It's almost humorless, and is mostly packed with uninspired dialogue and hijinks. Maybe I'm making it sound worse than it is, but Snowball Effect just has nothing to offer outside of cozy winter visuals. It only gets more and more boring as it goes on, ending out of nowhere, I guess with the payoff being SpongeBob and Patrick abandoning Squidward to play by himself? Like they switched roles from how it started? Cool story, bro, but I don't buy it. I'm kind of surprised this is from early season 3, honestly. It almost reads like one of season 1's forgettable episodes. Yeah, just a major miss on this one.
Stop! I wish to rule you!
Number 108, Gary Takes a Bath. Except he doesn't. An episode that feels like it exists just to fill out a season, Gary Takes a Bath is as uncompelling and simple as it sounds. SpongeBob tries to get Gary to take a bath, who stubbornly refuses. Whoop-de-doo. It's shorter than your average episode since there's barely anything to it, and I guess mainly just serves to pair alongside Shanghai for full episode length. Meaning Patchy starts this one off too, almost undoubtedly to just fill time. Very little that happens is entertaining. The story's about as bare bones as it gets, so the comedy has to carry it. And humor-wise, it's kind of okay, but mostly uninspired. I also don't like watching SpongeBob handle Gary in a rough manner. Despite Gary being cute, he's had a terrible track record in the rankings so far, with 3 of his 4 episodes already showing up in the bottom 10. This is probably one of the most cuttable episodes of the entire Golden Age, to be honest, which might seem harsh, but it really doesn't amount to much in the end. Number 107, Grandma's Kisses. SpongeBob gets teased after being doted on by his grandma, so he decides he wants her to treat him like an adult until realizing how much he misses the way it was. Despite Marion Ross's lovely performance as SpongeBob's grandma, I don't love the vibes here. Everyone teasing SpongeBob because his grandma kissed him on the forehead's dumb as heck. And I hate that this kind of thing would even affect SpongeBob like this. Judgmental pressure from others causing him to give up something pure that he appreciates. This kind of bullying's super not cool, and it'd be one thing if the episode told it off by the end, but instead, SpongeBob's honest about his feelings, she explains there's nothing wrong with them, which is true, but then he still asks her to keep it between them, and even unknowingly gets teased again by others watching through the window, who receive no reckoning for their ridicule. It undercuts any positive message being told here. If SpongeBob came out and was proud to appreciate his grandmother's love, that'd be a really healthy message to round out the episode. But the writers chose cheap, petty humor and a bad message in its place. Aside from that, this episode's just not funny, but it does make me want fresh-baked cookies and Milkies. And a ride in my wagon. Number 106, Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy 2. The first season finally showing its face, and its worst episodes also its last, committing the sin of being ungodly boring. A bad premise with unfunny jokes, it's almost bizarre they made this one for how much it lacks cohesion. SpongeBob, the recipient of a conch signal that calls Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, abuses it until being brought along as a hero sidekick while out on the town. A story that feels very unfocused, with dull dialogue, and a lot of the typical old jokes that come when this pair is focused on. The dirty bubble at the end's kind of a cool design for how basic it is, with a nice vocal performance, but he sadly doesn't really do anything. It's just an awkward episode all around. Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy 2 is a second attempt they shouldn't have bothered with, that just feels like filler.
Oh, my Neptune! He's been horribly disfigured.
Number 105, Sandy's Rocket. You know it's bad when I'm struggling to even find a funniest moment. The best thing I can say about Sandy's Rocket is that it has a unique premise. SpongeBob and Patrick accidentally take Sandy's rocket, only to land right back in Bikini Bottom. But they think they're on the moon, and go on an alien hunt with net guns, capturing all of their friends in their misunderstanding. It's as stupid as it sounds. The dialogue's weak, the jokes aren't funny, the payoff's awful, and SpongeBob just acts short-tempered and full of himself in a really unappealing way. Sandy gives off a different impression too compared to previous episodes, with how short she is with him. But I guess he killed a bunch of people with one of her gadgets? What? I don't know. The vibes are all wrong in this one, and I just feel bad afterwards, making it easy to not recommend.
Look at it, Patrick. It's disgusting.
Number 104, Arr! Mr. Krabs, after being pulled into a treasure hunting board game, recruits SpongeBob and Patrick to play as pirates and search for the real Flying Dutchman's treasure, using the game board as a map. An overcomplicated premise with almost no good humor, and an especially unlikable Mr. Krabs. His selfishness is dialed up here, only using SpongeBob and Patrick for his own ends, with absolutely no consideration towards them despite their loyalty. Manipulation and greed can be funny, but not when presented like this, completely over the top with no nuance. I do appreciate SpongeBob and Patrick being rewarded in the end while Krabs loses out, but this episode has very little to appreciate. It just plods along aimlessly, desperate for a humorous or creative moment, making this one of the most forgettable and worthless episodes of the first season.
So you think old Captain Krabs is gone crazy, do ye?
Not at all, Captain Krabs. We don't think that at all.
I think that.
Number 103, Nature Pants. SpongeBob, idolizing the life of Jellyfish, decides to live as one himself, leaving his friends and society for the wild. Of course, regretting this decision when he realizes, what do you know, it sucks. This episode's a little too dumb, and another one desperate for humor. I like that the people SpongeBob knows best each react to him leaving in their own appropriate way, and are there for him when he comes back, so I guess there's some warmth to the ending, but SpongeBob doing this on a whim's hard to buy, even for him. Like, how did he think the jellyfish were going to react? I like the Patrick meme face when he's trying to catch SpongeBob, but this one has very little to offer narratively and comedically.
Here, use this.
Number 102, I Had an Accident. SpongeBob breaks his butt in a sandboarding accident, making him afraid to go outside again. If you like spending most of an episode in one uninteresting spot, boy oh boy is this one for you. An uncompelling setup like this is almost destined for not much happening, and none of the SpongeBob staying at side bits are funny. This plot in general feels very undercooked, and ends in such a stupid way the fake family's reaction sums up mine perfectly. It's like the writers are admitting this one got away from them, and I do not like this live-action gorilla at the end. It's creepy and uncomfortable. There's not a lot to say about this one, honestly. It feels like the creators struggling to make an episode out of nothing.
Don't you have to be stupid somewhere else?
Not until 4.
Number 101, Krusty Love. An episode that feels forced and off. Mr. Krabs falls for Mrs. Puff, so the two go on a date, only for him to spend far too much money on her. So he puts SpongeBob in charge of his funds, but continuously goes back and forth between asking him to buy her things and scolding him for spending money. Okay, I don't buy at all that Mr. Krabs likes Mrs. Puff, especially not to this degree, and they really try to make you think he does. I don't buy all that much that she likes him either. I know romance is rarely seen in the golden age, but Mr. Krabs acting lovey-dovey towards her feels so unnatural, and seemingly only for the sake of this story. He loves money and his daughter. I have a hard time seeing him have an interest in anything else. Beyond this, Krusty Love's just not very funny. It's got one or two good lines, but I'm as annoyed as SpongeBob by the end. He tells off Mr. Krabs and bails, only then for Mrs. Puff to express appreciation for Krabs. And then it just ends, like, abruptly. Are they an item? Did they ever pick this back up? God, I hope not, because this one was hard to sit through.
Besides, I ain't properly dressed.
Aw, come on, Mr. Krabs, you look great.
Number 100, Wormy. I'm as surprised to see this one showing up already as you are, but I don't care for this episode. Boring and bereft of humor with a bad premise that just gets worse as it goes on. SpongeBob and Patrick look after Sandy's pets while she's away, becoming enamored with Wormy, a small green worm, until it turns into a butterfly and they think it's a monster, accidentally releasing it into Bikini Bottom and causing panic all over the city. Look, Wormy itself's cute. I'm glad nothing bad happens to it. And the That's What Friends Do song's honestly pretty nice. But I don't like much else about this episode or how it develops. It's a little too stupid to see everyone going crazy because of a butterfly, and I get that that's supposed to be what's funny about the situation, but it results in an annoying episode where everyone's just screaming all the time. Ridiculous scenarios like this can be funny, but the humor's not here to back it up. It feels like an overreaction narrative going through the motions, and just leaves me feeling hollow and irritated by the end. Whenever I watch this one, it never proves it was worth the time.
Just think what might have happened if we didn't tell everyone about the monster.
About the what?
Number 99, Missing Identity.
Well, you managed to kill 11 minutes.
My thoughts exactly. SpongeBob loses his name tag and is desperate to find it for an upcoming uniform inspection. So he retraces his steps, only for his shirt to have been on backwards all along. A weak story that sadly never graduates from that. SpongeBob repeating his earlier day shenanigans goes on for way too long. And there's not much to laugh at here in general. SpongeBob tells this story to randos at a diner, which is a cute way to frame it, but am I cynical for thinking they only did this to pad out the runtime, since it doesn't amount to much? Either way, I'm not getting much passion from this one. Kind of feels like an episode concocted just to have another episode, because its premise is lacking and its humor unremarkable. Play it again.
Well, that's my story.
Well, you managed to kill 11 minutes.
Number 98, Neptune's Spatula. I saw this episode far too often growing up, and it's another snooze. After SpongeBob pulls the golden spatula, Neptune appears to put him to the test and prove he's worthy of being his own personal fry cook. John O'Hurley's voice is great for Neptune's personality. He's very well characterized, but between his arrogance, judgmentalness, and elitism, you're not given much reason to like him. SpongeBob has a nice showing here, preparing a patty with sincerity and heart in the contest, for a warm conclusion while winning Neptune over. But this episode just drags, partly thanks to how long they spend in only 2 locations, and it's very light on humor. Despite his design and voice getting replaced in the movie, this episode's still appreciated for establishing Neptune, but it's a mediocre watch regardless.
Once upon a time.
Number 97, Karate Choppers. More like Karate Floppers. Oh boy, an episode focused on SpongeBob and Sandy's karate hobby. How immediately uninteresting. SpongeBob and Sandy's karate obsession gets in the way of SpongeBob's job, leading to them trying to stop doing karate altogether, which of course doesn't work out. Who frickin' cares? Aside from a few brief moments, this episode's a sedative and doesn't have much to laugh at. The fact that Mr. Krabs is even willing to fire SpongeBob over his obsessions, over the top insensitive. Like, I know Krabs can be short-tempered and no nonsense, but to fire him completely because of this makes him look like a real jerk, especially since he only comes around to karate because he realizes how he can benefit from it. Though, to be fair, that is in character. Either way, I don't care about SpongeBob and Sandy's karate shenanigans. They're not fun to watch, and neither is this episode. Number 96, ripped pants. SpongeBob rips his pants. Tee-hee. Anything else? I wasn't a fan of this episode back in the day, and I'm still not a fan of it. It's centered around a single unfunny joke driven into the ground. And yeah, I know that's the point, but man does it make this tedious to watch. SpongeBob, feeling threatened by Larry the muscular lobster, discovers that ripping his pants makes Sandy and everyone else laugh, until he pushes things too far and makes a jerk out of himself. While I do like the final message that being yourself's all you need to be, this concept's way too stupid, even for SpongeBob. How does he keep ripping the same pair of pants anyway? Even the somewhat nice song at the end doesn't save it, since it also falls victim to the ripped pants premise, and sticks in my head for days after hearing it. This one's just annoying, and was played way too often on TV.
Hello, SpongeBob. Could you keep it down? I'm trying to be boring.
Number 95, pickles. I don't think this one deserves to be as remembered as it is, and all because of pickles, although to be fair, they are an essential part of a good burger. 12 episodes after the pilot, and we finally have another one centered around SpongeBob's work life. No, Plankton doesn't count. This is also the first time Mr. Krabs is featured throughout an episode since the pilot, but it's not a great showing. SpongeBob makes a Krabby Patty for a nemesis of his named Bubble Bass, who claims it lacked pickles, sending SpongeBob spiraling into confusion at basically every aspect of his life, until he goes back, makes another Krabby Patty, and learns that he was tricked all along. It's this simple setup that makes this episode stick in your mind, particularly the pickles focus, but sadly, it's almost completely absent of good humor. I don't like watching SpongeBob not knowing who he is, and a lot of moments drag on while belaboring the punchline, which, to be fair, is very common in the first season, and all for a tepid ending to a big waste of time. But I guess if it's hard to forget, it's gotta be doing something right.
He burnt my shake.
Number 94, Home Sweet Pineapple. Another episode I'm surprised how much I didn't care for, since nothing about it's particularly problematic, but the story's stupid, the jokes aren't funny, and worst of all, it's just plain boring. SpongeBob loses his house to wandering nematodes, whatever those are. Ew, don't look them up. He loses his house, tries to stay with Patrick and Squidward, which of course doesn't work out, and gets ready to move back home with his parents, until right before leaving, his house grows back. Voila! Status quo reinstated. I like Squidward's excitement over SpongeBob leaving, but this is a slow-moving nothing episode. One of many with a fine concept that just goes nowhere. Get it? Because he didn't move after all.
Spiders! 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 Get off me! Get off me!
Number 93, I Was a Teenage Gary. My pick is the best Gary episode, but still a bottom tier episode overall. Despite some creative ideas, this one's fairly disturbing. Squidward fails to look after Gary while SpongeBob's away, leading to snail plasma mistakenly injecting SpongeBob, turning him into a snail mutant horror. An unpleasant setup on multiple levels. To start, it's so uncomfortable watching Gary cry out in pain, having not been fed in days. What a nightmare scenario for a pet not being taken care of in such a way. It makes my stomach churn watching this. You don't see Squidward care at all for Gary's state outside of the possible repercussions he faces. He's so disgustingly careless and self-centered here. And it only gets more unsettling when SpongeBob turns into a snail himself. Maybe it's just me, but the design's kind of creepy for how simple it is. I guess it at least serves as comeuppance for Squidward for what he did, but this episode makes me uncomfortable and barely has any laughs. Gary's cute little purring and meows, especially his singing at the ends, the only really good takeaway.
Say hello.
Number 92, Suds. The first time Patrick's painted in a more negative light, SpongeBob's sick with the suds, and Patrick tries helping him get better to keep him from going to the doctor, because he has some idea it won't be good for him. It's the customary sick episode of a series, and I'll at least say, the suds are a bit more creative than your average sickness, with a memorable name and distinct pink bubble sneezes. There's nothing else to praise about this one though. Like I said, Patrick, in his aim to help, gets so full of himself he's even served an unpleasant ending. It's true that he wasn't really helping SpongeBob, but he did have good intentions, at least at first. But whatever, he gets punished anyway. Most of these gags are too stupid to be funny, and Patrick's unlikable behavior keeps it on a downward trajectory the longer it goes on for a dull watch that's just annoying to sit through.
than I thought.
What do you mean? He's fine.
Number 91, jellyfishing. SpongeBob and Patrick want to go jellyfishing. Squidward mockingly and unsurprisingly tells them no, gets in an accident and bandaged up, and is then forced to go jellyfishing at their insistence, only resulting in more misery, but for everyone this time, me included. There are some nice intentions here from SpongeBob and Patrick wanting to include Squidward and give him a nice day, but this is otherwise another mean-spirited episode. A buffet of torture mostly fed to Squidward, but for some reason the others get their share as well. It's not fun watching characters get electrocuted, ride their bike off a cliff, have hot soup blown in their eyes, or literally get their hand, or tentacle in this case, impaled with a stick. I can't appreciate that this episode solidifies jellyfishing more as one of SpongeBob and Patrick's favorite activities, but it's kind of hard to sit through, and only made it this far because I'm a sucker for this group's dynamic. Squidward can be a real jerk sometimes, but he certainly didn't deserve this. It's a bunch of pain comedy that only slows down an already meandering episode. Number 90, Party Pooper Pants. Finally, a break from the parade of Season 1 episodes. But who said this one should be double length? SpongeBob throws a house party for just about everyone he knows, but tries to micromanage what they do during it, making them all miserable until he gets locked out of his own house, to the joy of his partygoers, but the dismay of himself. This isn't a great premise in the first place, and they don't do a lot with it, especially considering it's longer than your average episode. SpongeBob acts extremely annoying here, being really controlling, so I'm kind of happy he gets kicked out so everyone else can have fun. From then on though, it's just hijinks with him trying to get back in until being arrested, and ultimately discovering everyone thought the party was great, but unknowingly to him, only because he wasn't there. I'm glad he didn't ruin the party for everyone, but this plot feels a little contrived, and doesn't give you much to laugh at. The best part's getting to see different characters interact in this kind of setting, but they sadly don't spend much time on that. This might have worked better as a straightforward SpongeBob hosts a party story without the forced conflict and inevitable time just spent watching SpongeBob failing to get inside. Patchy the Pirate bookends this one too, with some parts in between, and I forgot just how not entertaining these segments can be. This one in particular is kind of embarrassing, with the most memorable thing being this puppet bird band that sings Underwater Sun, which isn't awful, but not exactly pleasant either. So yeah, I don't care for this episode. The Patchy stuff's stupid, SpongeBob's attitude's off-putting, and it's overall just not very funny. And when you're a full-length episode, you really gotta prove it's worth it.
Squidward, you made it!
My cable's out.
Oh, sorry to hear about that.
Number 89, My Pretty Seahorse. A noticeably boring episode. It's shocking to me just how light this one is on humor, with so many other early Season 3 episodes nailing the comedy. SpongeBob becomes friends with a wild seahorse he names Mystery, but she gets in the way of his work life, so he has to let her go. That's as far as it goes. Mystery's a cute idea, using a seahorse as a stand-in for a land horse, but they don't do much of interest with it. Hiding the horse at work while it sneaks Krabby Patties? You can do this story with almost any wild animal. Don't you want to use the horse to its full potential? I don't know. This plot feels undercooked to me. The jokes struggle for laughs too, making it a tame watch in pretty much every way, with the only lasting imagery being Mystery herself, and I guess Patrick with wood nailed to his head. It's a harmless episode despite my gripes, but wholly unremarkable.
The kitchen is no place for a live horse.
Number 88, Pre-Hibernation Week. Sandy, while preparing for hibernation, wants to do a whole bunch of fun stuff with SpongeBob, but the non-stop intensity drives him into hiding, so she and everyone else in town look for him. Not exactly a compelling story being told here, and a rather forgettable one at that. Sandy's up to her typical high-octane activities, and as usual, there's little humor to be found in them. Points for some visually creative gags, but there's a good amount of unsettling ones as well. Sandy almost comes off as abusive in this episode, but I get that she's just unaware of how SpongeBob really feels about these activities, and does put herself through everything he goes through. I like the face she makes when he's found, and the fact that this episode's actually placed a few before Survival of the Idiots, where she's actually hibernating. A surprisingly rare case of consistency. But either way, this episode's nothing special, and would love more laughs.
I'm
I'm ready.
No, you ain't.
Number 87, Texas. Sandy's homesick for Texas and plans to leave Bikini Bottom, only for SpongeBob and Patrick to trick her into staying by insulting it, so she can see a Texas-themed party they threw for her. An episode as boring as it sounds, no offense to Texas residents, but the insults directed towards it are the most entertaining thing about this one. Sandy sings a brief song about Texas early on, which has an okay melody, but doesn't stop this from being another dull watch. Sandy doesn't get many good episodes in the Golden Age, not that there are all that many, and I think that's due to a combination of what they're about and how she usually plays off other characters. There are a few exceptions, of course, but her plotlines don't usually present much good humor because of these traits, and this episode's a good example of that. Her getting mad at them in the chase scene's the best part, but nowhere near enough to keep Texas from being another Season 1 skip.
What's so great about dumb old Texas?
What did you say?
Texas is dumb?
Number 86, The Smoking Peanut. SpongeBob tosses a peanut at a giant oyster in the zoo, for it to then endlessly cry out in distress. He's then tormented in guilt, believing he upset it, until coming clean and the real culprit's revealed. I can't say I care all that much for this setup, but I guess that makes sense since I'm not a fan of loud, continuous noises, and they're constant throughout this one. SpongeBob's guilt trip's executed fine enough, with Patrick trying to figure out who did it, and SpongeBob acting defensively to everyone else. It's all fine for what it is, it's just not very engaging, and the jokes aren't here. The ending twist that it was Mr. Krabs all along who was responsible's an okay finisher, but the Smoking Peanut's a pretty grating watch, and doesn't bring much of worth to the Golden Age. The baby oyster's cute though.
I'm so close to solving this crime, I can almost taste it. Boy, crime fighting sure makes me hungry, and this yellow popsicle hits the spot!
Number 85, Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy. Dang, they show up this early in the show? Mr. Krabs hasn't even had his own dedicated episode at this point. It's kind of weird to see humans, ? in the cast, but it's a fun idea to reference Aquaman and older superheroes this way. Great voice casting as well from Ernest Borgnine and Tim Conway. They sell the doddery old codgers perfectly, and their unique timbers lend the pair a lot of character. SpongeBob and Patrick, idolizing Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy's adventures on TV, wind up meeting them in a retirement home, annoying them until they're sent packing. There's not much of a story here, and most jokes fall into one of two categories. The first, parodying superhero shows from the 60s. Who the heck watching this is going to get that? And the second, old people are old. The thing is, I actually like that Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy are senior citizens, and not just a flat one-to-one parody. They not only feel more original being elderly, but their age allows more creative storytelling when they're involved. Either way, this is a pretty bland episode, with a plot that doesn't feel finished. It's fine enough as an introduction for these recurring characters, but is noticeably lacking.
Why, are you here to rescue little old me?
Pipe down! You're gonna wake Mermaid Man, and he's ornery when his nap is disturbed.
Number 84, Squeaky Boots. Mr. Krabs' first focused episode, and not a great start. The plot has a solid foundation. He gives his daughter Pearl boots for her birthday that she hates, then cheats SpongeBob into taking them at the cost of his paycheck. Krabs is then slowly tormented by his greedy trick through the non-stop sounds of boot squeaks. His descent into madness is paced well enough to be believable, but this episode's almost jokeless. It's just a moralistic story surrounding Mr. Krabs' biggest personality trait, which can be entertaining on the first watch, but is brutal on repeats when you already know how it plays out. And drawn out scenes like the squeaky window certainly don't help. It's an okay episode to flesh out Mr. Krabs a bit more early on. In fact, this is even Pearl's first appearance, where she shows about as much depth as she ever does, but this one's still boring and desperate for a good punchline. Number 83, Jellyfish Hunter. Mr. Krabs recruits SpongeBob to catch hordes of jellyfish, so jelly can be added to Krabby Patties. But SpongeBob goes too far and catches just about all of them, only to realize Mr. Krabs has been mistreating them all along. A below average watch, this is a fine enough story concept with some interesting visuals, but doesn't end up giving a whole lot. I like the blue jellyfish and how it clues SpongeBob into what's going on, leading to them becoming friends in the end. Mr. Krabs' money grubbing things expected, but to mistreat the jellyfish to this degree is disgusting. But at least the show knows this, and he gets proper comeuppance for it. Jellyfish Hunter doesn't have many laughs, and is another contribution to the Mr. Krabs is an a-hole fund. I can at least appreciate the attempt at a new story surrounding the jellyfish in concept, but my biggest takeaway from this one's how appetizing a burger looks with jelly on it.
What are you doing with that?
Something that should have been done a long time ago.
No!
The squeaky bolt on this door was driving me crazy.
Number 82, Hooky. An episode that highlights just how infrequently the show focuses on being underwater. Mr. Krabs warns SpongeBob about the danger of fishing hooks, telling him to stay away, but Patrick convinces SpongeBob they're fun to play on, until SpongeBob pushes it too far and finds himself hooked. For a tame episode, Hooky's memorable for the concept alone. Fishing's an interesting thing to work into this world, as a kind of foreboding and unknown danger, but they sadly don't do all that much with it. The story follows a very expected progression as a cautionary tale to not mess with dangerous things that might seem okay on the surface, but it's very light on comedy. I like how lighthearted it stays overall, but aside from its unique scenario, Hooky's an unspectacular episode in almost every way.
Where is everybody?
I don't know. There was one kid here earlier.
Number 81, The Fry Cook Games. An overcomplicated premise, so half the runtime spent just setting it up. The Fry Cook Games are upon us, kind of an Olympics for fry cooks, with SpongeBob representing the Krusty Krab, and Patrick representing the Chum Bucket, leading to quirky challenges between the two. A disappointing episode for a premise with a lot of potential. A fry cook competition? You can do so much with that, but since the story also wanted to pit SpongeBob against Patrick, not a lot of time's left for the idea to really breathe. Their quarrels forced and unnecessary, and all while surrounded by lukewarm jokes and a rushed ending. It's an episode that would probably benefit from being double length. It's got a few decent moments here and there, but falls victim to its own convoluted setup, for an episode with interesting ideas that doesn't pay them off.
No! My name's not Rick!
Number 80, Life of Crime. A very okay episode. SpongeBob and Patrick think they stole a balloon and leave Bikini Bottom. Not the deepest setup, and while more does happen, the plot's so bare bones it's not very memorable. At first, when they're out in the wild, they try to embrace their new life, and in doing so, remember their bond of friendship, which is pretty nice. But then, of course, Patrick ruins it with his own stupidity, turning on SpongeBob in distrust, and the rest of the runtime spent on petty bickering. There are a few humorous visuals and lines, but not enough substance to how it plays out. I kind of wish they told a different story with the idea of the two thinking they're criminals, because it's another one with loads of potential, but what we got results in an exceptionally average episode.
You took my only food! Now I'm gonna starve!
Number 79, Walking Small. A rare Plankton episode that actually has nothing to do with the Krusty Krab or Krabby Patty secret formula. Plankton, wanting to build another chum bucket in Goo Lagoon, manipulates SpongeBob into acting more assertive to drive everyone else away. Talk about an unremarkable setup, and the humor and creativity is not far behind. It's different to see SpongeBob acting like a jerk, but they don't do all that much with it. The best bits when he's following Plankton's instructions and failing miserably. But there's not much here otherwise. It's a hard story to care about with no real stakes that's rarely funny. I'm happy to see Plankton involved in an evil scheme that doesn't surround the Krabby Patty secret formula, but what a forgettable episode this is. I guess if anything, it makes me want an ice cream cone, so yay.
That's my ice cream cone.
Great! Now let him have it!
You can have it.
Number 78, The Chaperone. SpongeBob fills in as Pearl's date for her prom, which doesn't go well until the end, kind of? It's an awkward episode. Despite having a concept with good comedic potential, this is another one that doesn't capitalize on it. It flows strangely, and most jokes are nothing special. The best compliment I can give it's the sponge dance at the end, where everything turns into chaos with fish students flailing around and bashing into each other. It's fairly amusing for how nonsensical it is, but but also feels like the writers gave up. This was an opportunity to maybe get a bit more insight into Pearl's character, being her first of only 2 focused episodes. But nope, she's just an image-conscious teenage girl. I don't get the dummy thing either. I don't know, this is a strange episode that despite potential lacks focus, resulting in one of Season 1's more forgettable offerings. Number 77, Bubble Stand. While this is the first of its kind, a few other episodes follow Bubble Stand's basic structure. SpongeBob and Patrick are up to something Squidward doesn't understand, and his frustration at that ultimately pulls him into it. And this is definitely one of the weakest versions of that formula, simply because very little that happens is funny. I can be a fan of simple stories like this, but this one's a little too empty, and several jokes overstay their welcome. The bubble blowing dance almost feels long just to pad for time, and the ending where Squidward's house flies away only to fall back down's a weak payoff. It's a shame because I like the premise of Bubble Stand and would have loved to see crazier things happen with the bubbles themselves, but the execution leaves a lot to be desired.
So peaceful.
Number 76, Muscle Bob Buff Pants. SpongeBob, aiming to put on muscle, gets a fake pair of blow-up arms and lies to everyone saying he got them through working out, only to be found out as a fraud in the end. A remarkably predictable storyline, and kind of boring because of that, but watching him try to keep up the facade certainly more interesting than just spamming the same punchline like ripped pants, which this episode reminds me a lot of, since SpongeBob's trying to win over Sandy and friends again in a very hollow way. This one's actually not bad before he gets the fake arms, but I can't stand smug, lying SpongeBob, and he's particularly obnoxious here. Muscle Bob Buff Pants feels uninspired, but thankfully has a few laughs here and there to keep it from being a total waste.
I'm country great. This squirrel's trying to kill me.
This is it.
Hey, that's great, Sandy. Oh, I sure had fun. We'll have to do it again sometime. Bye.
Number 75, Sleepy Time. A frustrating episode for how much it wastes a really cool concept, but I do think they tried. SpongeBob, asleep at home, accidentally leaves his dream and jumps into everyone else's to see what they're dreaming about. A premise with almost limitless potential that mostly amounts to annoying segments where SpongeBob ruins things for others. I do appreciate that nearly the entire main cast is included, since it's fun to see what each character's dreams are like, and the writers did a great job representing the personality and priorities of each individual. Sadly, it's just not very funny, a death knell for even the best of ideas, though this one did provide a few scenarios that wouldn't be the easiest to contextualize otherwise. Sleepy Time's appreciated for its imaginative qualities, but could go so much further with better material.
SpongeBob! Why have you stopped playing that wonderful music?
Number 74, Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy 4. SpongeBob gets a hold of Mermaid Man's belt and accidentally uses it to shrink everyone in town, unable to figure out how to turn them back to regular size. Not the most exciting episode, and I chalk that up to its somewhat frustrating progression. Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy are only here at the start and briefly at the end, and I'm fine with that, but I liked watching them play off Squidward, so I kind of wish there was more time spent on them interacting with other characters. Once SpongeBob gets the belt, it's his story from then on, and doesn't really go anywhere. People get shrunk one after another, until the end where SpongeBob just shrinks the whole town as a solution, which is kind of an amusing payoff, especially with Plankton arriving right after, but that's really all it amounts to. This one just could have used its time better, especially for the shrink ray's potential. They just kind of durdle around until the finish line, with a higher than usual amount of disturbing imagery. Like, come on, everyone just ripping SpongeBob's innards apart? It's pretty messed up. Ultimately, this episode's just not very funny. Wumbo's the most memorable thing about it, but it's at least a step up from Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy's earlier offerings.
He didn't lend it to you, did he?
Please don't tell.
You stole it.
Please don't tell.
Oh, I'm telling.
Number 73, Krusty Krab training video. As much as I appreciate them doing something special for the 100th episode, this isn't the most fun rewatch. Krusty Krab training video is exactly what it sounds like. A training video for working at the Krusty Krab, covering all sorts of topics like customer service and what it means to be a good employee. It's very jokey while spoofing training videos, but sadly isn't as funny as the real thing. Constant narration can get tiring quickly, and while this presentator's voice is nowhere near as annoying as it could be, his persistent non-stop dialogue with the same tone makes this kind of mind-numbing to watch. Alongside lukewarm jokes, including some low-hanging fruit, as well as ending out of nowhere, I just don't feel fulfilled by the end of this one. I will call out its unique presentation style to be like a video, which leads to some creative directing. This episode's definitely a cute novelty, and worthwhile for that alone, but could have been a lot better with more considerate use of its time.
Poised, confident, and a smile that says, "Hello world, may I take your order?"
Number 72, Christmas Who? Ah, the Christmas special. A requirement for just about every cartoon back in the day. Christmas Who's adequate for holiday vibes, but not much else. SpongeBob's introduced to Christmas, and gets everyone else in Bikini Bottom in on it. Only Santa doesn't arrive, so Squidward pretends to be him and gives out gifts instead, so they're not sad. It's okay as a Christmas story. You have the low point where everyone's feeling bad that Santa never came, and then the wholesome moment where Squidward's given a genuinely heartfelt gift by SpongeBob. You do feel how touched Squidward is in this scene, which brings out his compassion, posing as Santa Claus just because he doesn't want SpongeBob to feel let down, and even goes the extra mile for everyone else. That's the kind of quality you generally want to see in a Christmas Christmas special, a usually grumpy character opening up and coming together with their community. And it works fine for that, but I do have some qualms. First off, this is another double-length episode that doesn't need to be one. The first of its kind, in fact. I assume they made it this way to save it for Christmas time without attaching an unrelated episode to it. But it ends up feeling dragged out for how little goes on in the story, and it's incredibly light on humor. Considering Bikini Bottom's underwater, they do what they can to make it feel like Christmas at least. Decorations, white sand that looks like snow, festive music. In fact, they even changed the opening and closing themes just for the occasion. The very first Christmas song that plays around the middle is the best part of the episode, aside from Squidward's gift. It actually has a really nice melody to it, and I love that the main characters do most of the singing. The special ends on one of the most unappealing Santas I've ever seen. Whoever's playing this guy is not selling the part, and reads more like a college student who got smashed and threw on a costume. Not a fan. It's a bad taste to round things out, especially since he seemingly completely ignored Bikini Bottom for no reason. Way to make Santa unlikable AF. This is also Patchy the Pirate's first appearance, bookending Christmas Who and narrating some of it, but he feels a bit more awkward here than in later appearances. While his segments do help the episode feel more special, they're also clearly included to pad out the runtime, and prove that they don't need to be this long. Christmas Who needs more substance for its length, that would hopefully utilize the cast better. Heck, Sandy introduces SpongeBob to Christmas and then doesn't appear again. Like, what? Stuff like that just feels messy. As is, this episode provides enough Christmas whimsy to suffice for the season, but aside from a few specific parts, there's not much to celebrate here. And as the last of the 4 double-length episodes in the ranking, the writers sadly never managed to prove they're worth it.
I guess I won't be needing this. Oh, that's better.
Number 71, Bubble Buddy. I've never been big on this episode. SpongeBob, desperate for a friend, creates Bubble Buddy and totes him around Bikini Bottom while inconveniencing everyone. It's a solid setup that does have some humor, but I guess I just find it easy to feel the frustration everyone else does at SpongeBob and Bubble Buddy's nonsense. They even let this guy drown at the beach. How effed can you get? The reveal that Bubble Buddy was sentient all along's a rewarding ending, if a little predictable. I don't know. This episode's fine overall, but perhaps does too good a job of being annoying, since I feel it myself. If you like the kind of episode that revolves around a single joke executed in different ways, this'll probably really land for you. But to me, it's just plain tedious.
You'll never catch us now! Never! Ha-ha! Never! Never!
Number 70, Fools in April. A weird episode that's kind of all over the place tonally, and wraps up before it feels finished. SpongeBob, enjoying pranking others for April Fool's Day, annoys Squidward to the point where he pranks SpongeBob, but instead of a playful prank, he plays a cruel one, humiliating SpongeBob in the process. The first half's pretty grating, and illustrates well why April Fool's pranks usually suck, because most of the time, it's just lying. How creative. SpongeBob's clearly enjoying it, but I'm with Squidward on this one. However, Squid's prank on SpongeBob can hardly be called a prank either. It's basically physical and emotional abuse, bashing SpongeBob all over the room and humiliating him in garbage. It's really mean-spirited, to the point where it can be a bit hard to watch, especially with SpongeBob running out crying afterwards. Squidward's conscience shows up here, and he does end up apologizing to make things right, even to the point of saying he likes living next door to SpongeBob and the way that he is. It's hard to tell how true his words are here, but I think they are coming from a genuine place, and not just something he's saying to resolve the situation, proven further by his embarrassment seeing all the people he confessed this to. It's an interesting thing to throw into this episode, but unfortunately, Fools in April feels incomplete, since SpongeBob's emotional resolution's rushed. He seemed clearly upset about the prank Squidward pulled, but was also ready to prank back at his house. So was he actually upset? Did Squidward's apology really help him feel better about the entire incident? For the scene Squid's prank was made out to be, it's all just wrapped up a little unceremoniously on SpongeBob's end. Either way, this episode gives you something to chew on, despite not having much for laughs.
April Fools!
What did you do to my drink?
I...
You what?
Number 69, Born Again Krabs. Mr. Krabs' cheapness reaches critical mass, resulting in a trip to the hospital, where the Flying Dutchman appears and threatens to stuff him in Davy Jones' locker if he doesn't get his generosity together. Why does the Flying Dutchman give a damn about Mr. Krabs' morality? He's like playing the role of the devil for some reason. Whatever, use the characters you have, right? Anyway, this is Krabs at his cheapest and most despicable. His actions are very over-the-top self-interested, culminating with trading SpongeBob's entire soul for pocket change immediately after SpongeBob stands up for him. The fact that Krabs kind of gets off scot-free at the end's harder to swallow than the disgusting patty he eats, though I do appreciate Squidward standing up to him after he sells out SpongeBob. It's kind of fun seeing Mr. Krabs going the route of thoughtful charity towards others, but of course it's short-lived. This episode has a few funny moments, but pretty much cements Mr. Krabs' toxicity as an undeniably hopeless character.
Good enough to eat. Oh, look, an ambulance.
Number 68, I'm Your Biggest Fanatic. I don't like watching bullying, even if they get some kind of comeuppance in the end, which they usually do in a lot of stories. The mean-spirited intentions often have a bite to them that makes it hard to sit through. SpongeBob meets a jellyfishing idol of his named Kevin at a convention, who ends up being quite a jerk to SpongeBob, taking him out into jellyfish fields only to humiliate him. It's nice that SpongeBob effortlessly triumphs over all his challenges while Kevin has his own malice returned to him, but eventually SpongeBob gets tied up and shocked by them in a jellyfish robot, followed by laughing and name-calling, which is so mean and not nice. It's not often a major focus is given to a temporary character, and your enjoyment of the episode will likely hinge on how much tolerance you have for them. Humor's okay in this one, but not too noticeable. I do love the idea of seeing more of the jellyfishing fan culture of this world, but it's only a short-lived part of the beginning. Perhaps this one's themes don't meld well with me in particular, but either way, this is an okay episode at best.
All right, you, way in the back.
Hi, Kevin.
Number 67, Clams. Mr. Krabs, after earning his millionth dollar, takes SpongeBob and Squidward clam fishing, only for that same dollar to be eaten by a giant clam, driving him to madness and pressuring the crew to get it back. Now, as much as I like having new locations as the primary setting for an episode, Clams is kind of all over the place. Seeing the trio go out on a trip like this to celebrate's cool, so couldn't we have seen them, I don't know, enjoying themselves a bit longer before it goes to heck? And why'd they ditch the fishing gear? I liked the unique outfits they were wearing. It made the episode feel special. Anyway, SpongeBob starts tossing things off the boat, Squidward gets tortured a bit, Krabs' dollar is stolen so he loses his mind and becomes typical self-centered Krabs until he gets it back. The vibes just aren't pleasant because of all this, though it does have a few good jokes and visuals. It's certainly trying when it comes to creative reactions, but it's not enough to cover up the lack of heart otherwise. Clams is memorable for its original environment and plotline, but not the most worthwhile time.
A crew like you comes along maybe once in a lifetime.
Number 66, As Seen on TV. A Krusty Krab commercials aired on television, and SpongeBob mistakenly thinks someone saw him on TV, causing him to quickly become full of himself and give up being a fry cook to become a performer. An okay premise and another they don't do enough with. I usually like when cartoons spoof cheesy local commercials, and this one's alright, but suffers from what the rest of the episode suffers from, a lack of humor. It's got some memorable bits, like the clown at the start and the sweater song, but nothing here is close to laugh out loud. And big-headed SpongeBob's never charming. It's kind of cute how he eventually returns to fry cooking under the assumption he's performing for an audience. But As Seen on TV's a very tame story, with a somewhat interesting setup that fails to make the most of it.
No problem, Squidward. I got one already made out. Enjoy.
To my tail fin?
Number 65, Plankton's Army. A Plankton episode with his more traditional goal. Plankton, aiming to steal the Krabby Patty secret formula, calls for his Plankton brethren to form an army and overpower the Krusty Krab. This one moves at a nice pace, showing how Plankton's tried other methods but never really sought out minions, which works well for him here. This is also the most featured Plankton's wife Karen is in the Golden Age. She's got a great voice for snarky back and forths, so it's a shame she's not used more in the earlier seasons. But it's fine since Plankton doesn't have a whole lot of dedicated episodes anyway. His plan and conviction this time around keeps you engaged in the story, and his family's a charmingly simple people. The ending twist, where he uncovers the secret formula, only for it to reveal Plankton themselves are used to create Krabby Patties, is a killer payoff to what seems like him finally discovering the truth. It's a decoy, of course, to keep the status quo, but still a satisfying moment. This is a solid enough episode that would certainly appreciate funnier humor, since as is, it's light on laughs, but it fleshes out Plankton's life more in an appreciated way.
That's it, a little to the left. Curse you, Plankton, and your ability to join together to form a working human ear!
Number 64, Rockabye Bivalve. I like enough about this episode, but it's not without issues. SpongeBob and Patrick find a baby clam they raised together, turning their relationship into a co-parental one that quickly goes in an unhealthy direction. As usual, the good stuff's the funny jokes and creative twists, but things get rough when it comes to what the base plotline's touching on. SpongeBob, assuming a motherish role of the twos, taken completely advantage of by Patrick, assuming a fatherish role. An uncomfortable stereotype to start. Considering when this came out, it's no surprise the writers felt the need to label them this way, but it makes all sorts of unsavory statements about gender roles and relationship issues. The humor's centered around SpongeBob and Patrick being in this kind of relationship, but the negative vibes it comes with can kind of take away from the comedy, and this is another poor showing for Patrick's character, since he's obnoxiously self-serving here. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a very hit or miss episode for a lot of people considering the themes. The baby clam's pretty cute for how simply it's expressed, and it is host to some funny moments, but Rockabye Bivalve probably wouldn't be made today, or at least if it was, I think a lot would be changed with how it was handled.
Oh, you poor thing. By the way, you forgot your briefcase.
Number 63, Rock Bottom. Yeah, Rock Bottom's showing up already. Hear me out. Rock Bottom's gotta be one of the most famous and beloved episodes, not only from Season 1 or the Golden Age, but SpongeBob SquarePants as a whole. I liked this episode more growing up, but today it's a little annoying. SpongeBob accidentally takes a bus to Rock Bottom, a dark, deep-sea place where he struggles to get back to Bikini Bottom. Despite SpongeBob staying in one spot, I remembered being enamored with such an unsettling location back in the day, and it's the greatest strength of this episode still. The creepy atmosphere and freaky deep-sea creatures are captivating to watch, but sadly, the episode's premise doesn't do them justice. It's mostly made up by a single repetitive SpongeBob can't catch a break joke, often in the form of a bus, and it's just not very funny. Watching him struggle the whole time for the sake of it's irritating, because nothing about it's deserved, and his constant failure to fix the problems pointlessly spiteful. This episode's certainly a classic for the memorable location and imagery, but would love better material. It's a shame they use such a cool environment on what's ultimately a one-off abuse joke that's not even clever, but considering the reputation Rock Bottom holds today, it can't be denied this one leaves a lasting impression. Number 62, The Paper. Squidward, watching SpongeBob having loads of fun with a small piece of paper he discarded, starts to obsess over SpongeBob's fun with it, until giving him everything he owns to get it back. Not the best execution of this setup, but certainly better than Bubble Stand, since this one does a lot more with the paper than that one did with Bubbles. With that considered, Squidward's descent into obsession's not as believable here. I know SpongeBob's really selling how much fun he's having with something so simple, but would Squidward really give it that much of his attention? Not only to the point where this actually looks like fun to him, but even trading all of his stuff away for it? It's a fairly predictable story that can be funny, but Squidward's rushed emotional development makes it a bit difficult to buy his fixation. That, along with fairly standard jokes, keeps the paper from fully landing. It's fine for what it is, but we'll look at a much better done version of this concept later.
No matter how much I may beg and plead and cry, don't give that paper back to me. Ever.
So I take that as a possible no?
Number 61, Plankton. Plankton's introductory episode does a good job setting him up as the recurring antagonist. His attempt to claim the Krabby Patty secret formula by controlling SpongeBob's brain comes so close to succeeding that right away he does feel like a threat, despite also showing incompetence and weakness, with a simple temptation even leading to his failure here. It's easy to scrutinize his entire goal, like how can he not get his hands on a Krabby Patty? He can't buy one? Are you not allowed to bring food outside the building? Why did he need SpongeBob specifically just to crash through the wall? Whatever. I know it's ludicrous to pick any of this apart. There's obviously a lot that doesn't hold up when you overthink this show, but it can make it hard to find Plankton's struggle believable. Ultimately, all that matters here is that Plankton's character and goals are clearly conveyed, and his uniquely tiny stature, yet boastful personalities, a nice contrast for a comedic villain. This episode would certainly benefit from funnier punchlines, but it's got enough creativity for an adequate first showing for one of the series' most important recurring characters.
Shut your mouth, you mediocre clarinet player. Mediocre?
Number 60, Help Wanted. As far as pilot episodes go, Help Wanted's very solid. It introduces most of the show's important characters, their base personalities, and SpongeBob's biggest focal point, his job at the Krusty Krab, which this episode fittingly shows him acquiring. I like how confident SpongeBob is in himself from the get-go. He does briefly get cold feet before applying, but it's short-lived, and despite the unrealistic demands from Mr. Krabs to find a high-tech spatula he made up, SpongeBob doesn't sweat it, showing up as a master of his craft at the end to save the day, solidifying the setup for the wacky underwater adventures we're in for. As a first episode, I could see finding SpongeBob a bit irritating, but his sincerity's quick to endear, and the rest of the cast is presented very well. Squidward's sour characterization paints a strong persona from the get-go that communicates his relationship with SpongeBob quickly and cleanly. Mr. Krabs doesn't give much here outside of his ability to be conniving, but that's a nice start and the kind of quality you want in a boss in a comedy show like this. While brief, Patrick's the only other character to really get shown off here, but his inclusion's worthwhile as he's very supportive of SpongeBob, and is even clever enough to know how to cheer him up when he doubts himself. Considering how short Help Wanted is, it doesn't take time explaining every little aspect of the world and how it works, and thankfully doesn't suffer for it. You just get it. This is an underwater version of human life with sea creatures. With all that said, I'm never eager to revisit this episode since it doesn't have a ton of laughs, but it's a well-done introduction to the core characters and tone to expect with this series, and as a pilot in particular, has aged very well.
I'll prove I'm fry cook material. Ask Squidward, he'll vouch for me.
No.
Number 59, Big Pink Loser. Patrick's never exactly been the brightest bulb in the box, but this is the first episode to exaggerate his incompetence to a whole new level. He's portrayed as so dumb, it's hard to buy how he can even exist. Patrick, disappointed with having no awards, gets a job at the Krusty Krab to better himself, eventually copying SpongeBob's look and behavior entirely, believing this will bring him success. It's a fine concept for an episode, but doesn't have the most compelling jokes. There are a few good ones, but most just reiterate the "look at how dumb Patrick is" punchline, which gets tiring in excess. I like that ultimately he's awarded in the end for just being himself, but there's not much to this one. It's well paced and visually interesting, but Patrick's usually too one-note to carry an episode on his own. And would you look at that, we're officially over the halfway point. We can finally jump into the better half of the Golden Age, where the moniker truly earns its title. Number 58, SB129. Squidward, wanting to get away from SpongeBob and Patrick, accidentally time travels to the future and the past, until he just wants to go back home. Time travel's an out there concept even for SpongeBob, but is the kind of compelling scenario that made me really excited for this episode as a kid. Unfortunately, this is another example of A+ concept and C+ execution. I would say part of the problem's being a good idea restricted to a half-episode runtime, but as we saw with UGG, that might not be the case. As is, it's a shame to see them kind of run through each segment here. Future and past versions of Bikini Bottom gets the imagination flowing, but we only get brief glimpses. SpongeBob and Patrick's really all you get. You don't see any other known characters, and the jokes are very predictable, like robot names in the future and acting like cavemen in the past. It's just not a very interesting result of a creative idea, and more importantly, the episode struggles to be all that funny. Especially the primordial segment, which is mostly a lot of screaming. I love this face though. Even if it doesn't come close to hitting its potential, SB129's still worth it for the unique plot and curious time jumping, making for a memorable yet wanting classic.
Ready to go?
No, I'm not ready to go.
Number 57, Reef Blower. A strange one, but I like it. This is a very short few-minute episode in the middle of two other standard episodes, showing SpongeBob using his reef blower to clean his front lawn, often at the expense of Squidward, who kind of instigated the whole thing. While there's no spoken dialogue, it's plenty expressive, with only a single chill music piece playing over the antics. It doesn't really offer much outside of some fun visual gags, but cements the typical winner-loser dynamic between the two of them early. And I like that SpongeBob's not always just winning, struggling here with the reef blower itself. It's important he has his own moments of frustration to make him more varied and relatable. There's really not much else to this episode, but it's nice for what it is, and accomplishes more in establishing this world than you'd think. Number 56, Scaredy Pants. SpongeBob's obligatory Halloween episode, and a satisfactory one at that. SpongeBob, sick of getting scared by everyone else, throws on a bedsheet and pretends to be the Flying Dutchman, until the real Flying Dutchman shows up and removes the costume, only for SpongeBob's exposed brain to scare everyone away. As far as cartoon Halloween specials go, while Scaredy Pants could certainly be funnier, it's ideal at providing exactly what you wanted to. Halloween vibes. Trick-or-treating, jack-o'-lanterns, decorations, spooky stories, a costume party, and even a ghost by the end. It's perfect to immerse yourself in the season. The story's cute, with SpongeBob doing his best to be spooky, and the exposed brain's actually kind of unsettling. This is also the Flying Dutchman's first appearance. He's got a nice design and a fantastic voice for the part, but not the most memorable dialogue here. Either way, this is more than adequate as a SpongeBob Halloween episode, but not that praiseworthy when compared to everything else. It could just do with more humor.
Don't you want to hear my annual scary story?
No, thank you, Mr. Krabs. Does it have monsters in it?
Aye, the worst monster of them all.
No.
Number 55, Sailor Mouth. SpongeBob and Patrick learn a swear word and use it carelessly, so Mr. Krabs tells them it's a bad word that they shouldn't say, but it only ends up coming out again anyway. I enjoyed this episode more growing up than I do now. Swearing isn't usually a thing in kids' entertainment, and even considering the family-friendly dolphin noises used for it here, it made me feel like I was watching something I wasn't supposed to as a kid. That said, Sailor Mouth hits much less harder for me today, since most of its humor is centered around that one joke of saying inappropriate words. It's an easy enough watch with plenty of expressive reactions, but overly relies on the one punchline to carry it. And since that punchline gets old fast, as it is just senseless cursing, there's not much left to get invested in here.
Mr. Krabs, Mr. Krabs, Mr. Krabs!
What?
Patrick!
Yes.
Number 54, Bossy Boots. The only other Golden Age episode centered around Pearl, alongside the chaperone. This, by far, being the better of the two. Pearl starts working at the Krusty Krab, transforming its style and menu to attract younger crowds, but changes things so much it's to the detriment of everyone else. A novel premise that's executed well enough, but like many of the episodes we're covering now, would benefit from funnier jokes. Pearl can be grating with a lot of screen time since she's often very one-dimensional, but I do like seeing the writers try more interesting stories with her. I also like that ultimately the issue here is resolved in a way that pleases both sides, without any hurt feelings, and the various names they come up with for the new Krusty Krab are a lot of fun. Bossy Boots is not an episode I really look forward to, but it's a perfectly adequate time, with a nice energy to it, and the oh-so-memorable salads.
Oh, Birdie. Is that a 20?
Number 53, Pranks-A-Lot. The only episode of the Golden Age I don't think I've seen before now, and it's alright. SpongeBob and Patrick use a can of invisible spray on themselves to prank everyone in Bikini Bottom, making them believe they're ghosts. An episode all about silly hijinks. I like how many characters they pull into this one, and the general setup offers enough curiosity to want to see how it concludes. In the end, they're embarrassed in front of everyone they pranked, which I guess is fair enough considering they had a laugh at their expense first. But there are two things that bother me about the ending. How did they change the Krusty Krab's windows into rubber? And how did everyone show up here an instant after Krabs found them out? I know, so pointless to question such things, but I need a little bit more sensibility to my progression, I say about an episode where they turn invisible with a spray can. Anyway, this is a harmless watch with enough lighthearted humor for a decent time. It's the final episode of the Golden Age, in fact, and while not profound in any way, it's not a bad one to go out on.
What else have we got?
A whoopee cushion?
Nah.
Fake vomit?
No.
Real vomit?
Ew.
Number 52, Welcome to the Chum Bucket. Mr. Krabs loses SpongeBob's contract to Plankton in a card game, so SpongeBob has to start working at the Chum Bucket. But his discomfort in the change causes Plankton to go the extra mile to console him, only for SpongeBob to become spoiled and stop listening. A spectacular premise with a slightly above average execution. It's fun to see SpongeBob working for Plankton in such an unnatural environment. There's even a somber song around the middle between SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs called This Grill Is Not a Home, which, despite the ridiculous lyrics, actually sounds quite nice, with a good amount of heart in it, even if it is kind of a farce. This episode's pleasantly upbeat, but another one wanting for funnier jokes. Welcome to the Chum Bucket's unique setup makes it fun to watch, but I wish they pushed the concept a lot further, or even considered this as a double-length episode. There's just so much comedic potential with this idea, that it's disappointing for this to be all they did with it. Either way, it's a perfectly adequate episode.
What kind of cold, heartless person would break apart such a loving relationship? I would!
Number 51, Hall Monitor. Hall Monitor is another Season 1 classic with a fun setup that's light on laughs. SpongeBob gets bestowed the title of Hall Monitor by Mrs. Puff. Would a boating school really need a hall monitor? Whatever. He takes the responsibility out into the world to help the masses, but only causes chaos. It's cute to watch SpongeBob try his best, and Patrick's innocence is charming, but nothing especially notable happens here. The best part's when Patrick thinks SpongeBob's the maniac, and tries to help him to avoid, well, himself. It's a silly and harmless episode with a memorable premise, but yet another Season 1 icon that could use stronger material to back the label up.
I get an ice cream.
Okay, now what?
Number 50. Wet Painters. Mr. Krabs puts SpongeBob and Patrick in charge of painting a big room in his house, telling them to be careful not to get paint on anything since it's permanent. So the two panic after his first dollar ends up covered, only for Krabs to reveal it wasn't permanent after all. I remember liking this episode more back in the day. It's got plenty of energy and amusing reactions, but the jokes could be a lot funnier. It is cool to spend some time in Mr. Krabs' house for a change. This is certainly a novel setup for a plotline, it just doesn't deliver enough laughs, and a few jokes go on for longer than they need to. Either way, Wet Painters is a very solid episode, with enough creative visuals to be surprisingly memorable for how basic it is. But it's hard for me to ignore how much more impressive this episode could be with more compelling comedy.
We did it! We painted the whole house, and without getting a drop of paint on anything but the flappin' flotsam, what's that?
Number 49, Pizza Delivery. Is it sacrilege to put this episode all the way up here? I know this is like one of the most classic episodes of SpongeBob, and it's solid. I just don't think it's much more than that. SpongeBob and Squidward get lost while trying to deliver a Krusty Krab pizza. A more than sufficient setup, but nowhere near as funny as it could be. It's very slow-paced, and several jokes are dragged out. I adore the SpongeBob-Squidward dynamic, but Pizza Delivery just doesn't use its time as well as it could. With that considered, the payoff makes it worth seeing through. After SpongeBob's torn down by an unruly customer for forgetting a drink that was seemingly never ordered, Squidward watches him break down in failure. Squid then marches over to the customer and stands up for SpongeBob, returning his spirits to normal. It's a great moment, showing a layer to Squidward's character that's rarely seen, that he does have a heart and will even go to bat for SpongeBob, who did nothing but annoy him before this moment. I like a wholesome backbone in the things I watch, so you can imagine how much I appreciated this end to the story, showing Squidward's compassion when push comes to shove. Still, despite the killer ending, this is just a fine episode, but I won't deny it's a classic.
Oh, how could it get any worse?
Number 48, Survival of the Idiots. Another episode that excels more for its premise than its comedy. Sandy's gone into hibernation for the winter, and SpongeBob and Patrick are trapped in her snowy tree dome, where they get up to all sorts of mischief at the mercy of her new beast-like form. The snowy setting's a nice change of pace to watch them play around in, and makes me realize just how often this show stays in the same places. You don't usually see much of the inside of Sandy's treehouse either, but it's her monstrous hibernation form that makes this episode stand out, for how unhinged and dangerous it is. Of course, SpongeBob and Patrick wake her several times messing around, and while I really enjoyed their antics growing up, who can't forget Dirty Dan and Pinhead Larry, not a lot of this hits for me today. It's entertaining enough with a chuckle here and there, but nowhere near as funny as I found it back then. The ending's also super effed, where they completely strip Sandy of her fur. That's the kind of thing that would give her trauma, and is kind of disturbing to play for laughs, but there's no question this episode's another golden age icon.
All right, Pinhead, your time is up.
Who you calling Pinhead?
Number 47, The Secret Box. SpongeBob, eager to learn the contents of Patrick's new secret box, sneaks into his house to look at what's inside. What gets me about this story is while I understand SpongeBob being curious about the box, the fact that he shows almost no care whatsoever for Patrick's privacy's not a good showing for his character. He persistently tries to get into the box regardless of Patrick's desires. And even after Patrick says he's not sure if they can even be friends anymore with how SpongeBob's acting, SpongeBob figures if he can just sneak a peek at what's inside without him knowing, all is well. Yeah, who cares about lying and betraying your friends as long as they don't know about it? It's super not cool. The ending's kind of a cop-out too, with Patrick catching him in the act, and forgiving him on the spot like it's nothing. At least he tricked him in the process by making SpongeBob believe he saw everything that was inside the box. But where are the emotional consequences? I know it's a comedy show first, and as far as that's concerned, this episode's okay, and offers a good amount of creative visuals and funny lines. And I like how well it captures just how obscenely loud everything is when you're trying to be quiet. It's an alright episode, not one of the more memorable stories of the Golden Age, and not super funny, but a perfectly serviceable time.
The inner machinations of my mind are an enigma.
Number 46, Sandy, SpongeBob, and the Worm. An Alaskan bullworm's on the loose in Bikini Bottom, eating all sorts of things, prompting Sandy to hunt it down to get her tail back. But SpongeBob tries with all his might to stop her, so she doesn't get eaten herself. For how few laugh-out-loud moments this one provides, its upbeat energy and amusing twist ensure it's just entertaining enough to be on the better end of Sandy episodes. I like her confidence here and eventual realization of what the worm actually is. Sadly, not a whole lot's done with the worm once it shows up, only chasing them briefly before falling into a trench. The story's more about the build-up to the encounter, and I'm very glad they chose to not show the worm until the end, for an excellent punchline. The town's panic's worth praising for helping build up the danger. Like I said, this episode would love more good jokes, but it's still an enjoyable watch with a satisfying ending.
Oh, this is the tongue. And the whole thing is the worm.
Number 45, Boating School. A good one for establishing an important part of SpongeBob's life. The fact that despite being a competent adult, he struggles with learning how to drive. Or more specifically, the anxiety that can come with it. It's a nice problem to help balance out his character, since he's usually quite talented at many things he tries. Around the time this episode first aired, a lot of other shows aimed at younger audiences had a big focus on school. This is kind of like SpongeBob's way of incorporating similar elements without going all the way, and allows him to play the role of student to a teacher, which is the perfect excuse to add one of my favorite characters to the series, Mrs. Puff. Her apathetic approach to SpongeBob's enthusiasm means their interactions are never dull. SpongeBob, desperate to finally get his driver's license, unknowingly cheats the test with Patrick's help, but the moment he realizes what he's doing is cheating, he owns up to it on the spot, showing just how pure his intentions are. His purity is one of the biggest reasons he's so likable. A few parts go on for too long, but this is a light-hearted episode that not only fleshes out SpongeBob's life well, but gives us a great personality for him to play off of.
Yes! Hey, I just got my license!
Hey, I'm getting mine next.
Hey, I doubt it!
Okay, see you on the road.
Number 44, Midlife Crustacean. We've come to this episode, the band episode. Mr. Krabs, feeling old, joins SpongeBob and Patrick for a night out of young fun, only to realize how lame their idea of fun really is. Okay, let's start with the first 3/4 of the episode, which is fairly entertaining. Old jokes can easily feel cheap, but some of them are actually funny here. The start of the episode's nicely paced, conveying well why Mr. Krabs feels his age. And I love how hilariously uncool the things SpongeBob and Patrick do with him are, though most of these activities are only shown very briefly. Eventually, Mr. Krabs snaps and calls them out on being lame, and then the episode goes in a weird direction when they convince him to come along on a panty raid. Yeah, those panties. Who on earth got this okayed to be in an episode? Sneaking into a lady's bedroom to look at their underwear's unhinged AF for a show like this to include, and is insanely out of character for SpongeBob and Patrick to not only be a part of, but to instigate. Like, what? It's so out of place here, casting a gross shadow on usually innocent characters. They'd really take part in this? Made all the more uncomfortable when it turns out they raided Mr. Krabs' mom's house, and that they regularly come here to look at her things? Bro, who did this, and how? It certainly makes this episode a lot more difficult to rank, since everything before the end's solid, but the panty raid's an unavoidable part of Midlife Crustacean's identity, likely going for sensational humor, but just being bizarre. So yeah, I like this episode enough to rank it here, but the final segment holds it back for obvious reasons. And what does it say that this is still one of Mr. Krabs' better episodes?
Well, no wonder. It's all old and dried out, like that man right there.
Number 43, Procrastination. A very simple episode that taught me the meaning of its title. SpongeBob has trouble writing an essay for boating school, and repeatedly creates distractions that pull him away from the task. But his anxiety over not getting it done only keeps growing. While this one could be funnier, I like how relatable it is. SpongeBob's struggle to get in the zone highlights the importance of not forcing creativity when you're not in the right headspace. Or alternatively, thinking too much about whether or not you can get something done, which might end up making it feel more difficult to do than it really is. This episode portrays these kinds of situations very accurately, so it's easy to understand SpongeBob's panic as time winds down. It's a pretty engaging watch for that reason, with a nice amount of creative visuals and a surprisingly memorable premise for how minimal it is. Number 42, Squidville. Squidward, finally at wit's end with SpongeBob's antics, moves into a private community of squids who act just like him, until growing tired of the routine and choosing to act zany like SpongeBob. I'm primarily giving this episode credit for its bizarre concept. I mean, this whole town of Squidward-likes, all with the same interests and base personalities, and even homes, just exists? It's pretty out there when you really think about it, but offers a fun opportunity to see Squidward living in what you'd think would be his ideal world. I know it's silly to even question this, but what about his job at the Krusty Krab? The episode's 11 minutes, bro, what do you want? Squidville shows the importance of variety in our lives, and why it's great that we don't all act the same way and think the same things. A lesson on how boring it would be if we all had the same perspective and priorities, and it's this point that makes the episode worthwhile. It's not the strongest episode for jokes, but it's thought-provoking enough to stay entertaining.
I've heard better comebacks from a turkey sandwich. Get a life! This place is better than I expected!
Number 41, Patty Hype. Another episode not big for laugh-out-loud moments, but Patty Hype has a fun premise and satisfying progression. SpongeBob comes up with the idea for Pretty Patties, Krabby Patties in various colors, but is laughed at by Mr. Krabs, so he opens his own restaurant to sell them to a hilarious level of success. I've always loved vibrant colors and rainbows, so no surprise, I love Pretty Patties. I'd totally eat any one of these, well, provided they don't have the side effects, but a glow-in-the-dark tongue would actually be sweet. SpongeBob's very cute in this episode, believing in his idea and being well rewarded for that. Even better since Mr. Krabs, having traded businesses, is the one to take the fall when it turns out they weren't all that harmless, which feels justified after he laughed at SpongeBob's idea and then tried to cheat him out of it when he was proven wrong. SpongeBob's reaction to getting the Krusty Krabs especially adorable. He's clearly so stoked about it and just loves the place so much. It's wicked wholesome. While light on humor, Patty Hype has a nice energy and payoff, with an unforgettably colorful concept.
At first, we didn't know what to do with all the money. We tried burying it, shredding it, and burning it. But in the end, we decided to just give it all away.
Number 40, Culture Shock. Squidward's put in charge of a talent show to bring more business to the Krusty Krab, with a selection of train wreck acts, until SpongeBob garners all of the applause just by mopping up the stage at the end. This is another fun setup for an episode that gets to use most of the show's cast. Its success of course hinges on whether or not the talent segments are funny, and while I definitely think they could have stronger payoffs, they do get some chuckles, and it's just fun seeing what each character does. This is also one of the few times Squidward's egotistical, artistic side's shown more, which of course leads to a reality check for him, only for earnest SpongeBob to win over the audience for basically just existing. It's a fantastic punchline, and also humbling for Squidward, rounding the episode out nicely as a decently entertaining time. Number 39, Opposite Day. A rather complex episode for early SpongeBob, tackling the question of, if Squidward can't stand SpongeBob and Patrick so much, why doesn't he just move? This one's got some good bits in it. Squidward convinces SpongeBob to do the opposite to get him out of his hair, for his meeting with a real estate agent. SpongeBob takes this too far, and ends up taking on Squid's identity, completely ruining his chance of selling his house. It's a bit sad to see Squidward bite it so hard here, since, at least in this episode, he doesn't really do anything to deserve it. He's just trying to mitigate his neighbor's chaos so he can be free of it for good. But I get that he's generally going to wind up on the bottom by the end of most stories. I think that really proves that at least most of the time, SpongeBob's not a show that's trying to teach lessons or reward good behavior. It's about comedy, so how does this one do? Pretty okay, actually. It's got some creative moments, and the Squidward impressions are amusing. Leave it to SpongeBob to get carried away, but I don't think Squidward's plan was all that bad. Opposite Day's a solid episode, and portrays the trio's dynamic nicely.
It's not my birthday!
Number 38, Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy 3. Would you look at that, a good Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy episode. And what do you know, they're barely in it. Legit, they're here for maybe the first 2 minutes and then never seen again. But kind of to the episode's benefit. Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy go on vacation and leave SpongeBob and Patrick to take care of the Mermalair, where they release one of their greatest enemies, Man Ray, who tricks them into teaching him to be good so he can be freed and continue being evil. Man Ray's a great guest character, with an effectively simple design and stellar voice acting for the part. He plays off the other two really well for comedy. Not a whole lot happens in this episode aside from amusing back and forths, but it's funny enough to keep your attention. I guess it's pretty typical that villains end up being more entertaining than heroes, and that's one of the reasons it's hard to miss Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, because Man Ray's presence ensures this episode's far more memorable than what they usually bring to the table.
Oops! Yeah, you butterfingered pink thing! What's in that box anyhow? My wallets.
Number 37, Squilliam returns. Squidward, in the hopes of turning the Krusty Krab into a 5-star restaurant to impress his high school rival Squilliam, turns SpongeBob into a master of fine dining through psychological stimulation. But of course, it doesn't work out in the end. And I think that's a real shame. This is Squilliam's second appearance after his humbling in Band Geeks. And what I don't like about how this is handled in comparison is that Squidward doesn't show him up again here. It's not often Squidward gets a win in the Golden Age, and since both him and Squilliam are remarkably petty characters, if he could ever come out on top, I'd want it to be at Squilliam's expense, since he's just a bully who kicks him while he's down. A shame the restaurant ruse blows up in his face, but even when it does, it would have been nice if Squidward stood up for his position as a cashier, with pride in what he does to survive and care for himself. He doesn't have anything to prove to this guy, and that would have made the facade crashing down satisfying if it was followed by an unexpectedly powerful character moment. But good luck getting that kind of message with this show. Regardless, SpongeBob as a fine dining expert's entertaining, and it's fun to see the Krusty Krab all fancy. The inner workings of SpongeBob's mind and the appetizer monster are both delightfully funny as well, ensuring this is an amusing episode despite the disappointing ending.
But what about Krabs and Patrick?
Taken care of.
Number 36, Crabborg. I remember this one being funnier, but it's still a good time. SpongeBob watches a scary robot movie, and with some evidence convinces Squidward that Mr. Krabs is a robot. It's a pretty stupid setup, but thankfully leads to a good amount of humor among the three. Even so, I find it incredibly difficult to buy that Squidward would believe this, at least not with the level of evidence he's presented here. Once he's convinced Krabs is a robot, he's totally in on it with SpongeBob all the way to the end. That's asking for a huge suspension of disbelief, thinking he'd go along with it this far. In any case, I like the part where they're trying to figure out if it's true or not, but the end's a little oversimplified in how it all wraps up. Crabborg still uses its premise pretty well for funny moments, but feels a bit undercooked narratively. Either way, it's entertaining enough, and that's what matters most.
Squidward! The robots are running the Navy!
Not the Navy!
Number 35, Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy 5. The final Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy episode of the Golden Age, and also the best one. Barnacle Boy, tired of being treated like a child by Mermaid Man, turns to the side of evil, so Mermaid Man recruits SpongeBob and friends and gives them each superpowers to defeat the evildoers and save Bikini Bottom. Finally, an episode named after this pair that's well executed, without also abandoning them. Barnacle Boy turning to the side of evil and teaming up with Man Ray and the Dirty Bubbles, a compelling plot already, but to also suit up SpongeBob, Patrick, Squidward, and Sandy with their own superpowers is icing on the cake for a very robust premise. The possibilities result in a good amount of creative storytelling and humor, and I especially like that the heroes completely defeat themselves out of their own incompetence using their powers, while the villains don't lift a finger. I also like that the evildoers mostly commit petty crimes and irritations. The lack of seriousness to both sides keeps this light and entertaining, capped off by a wholesome ending seeing the pair reunite with a new level of respect. While this one's far from hilarious, it's a fifth try that feels like the culmination of this pair's story, proving Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy can helm an episode to success.
Nothing! Ice cream? I love ice cream.
Number 34, SpongeGuard on Duty. SpongeBob pretends to be a lifeguard to be cool like Larry, only for anxiety to strike when left in charge of the lagoon alone. My favorite Goo Lagoon episode, and kind of the only one I'd really recommend. The writers get a good amount of fun out of this concept, thanks to plenty of creative imagery and amusing moments. Larry's kind of in a weird position in the show, in that he never has his own focused episode, or is treated as much more than a background character, at least in the Golden Age, yet is still named and recurring. He's likable enough, but doesn't show much depth, which I guess is why they never did much more with him. This is just a SpongeBob lied about something and is now in over his head episode, that progresses smoothly with a lovely amount of exaggeration to really sell the punchlines. The ending's a little muted, but not enough to keep this episode from being an easy good time.
Let me be struck by a flying ice cream truck. And live!
Number 33, Imitation Krabs. One of Plankton's more entertaining escapades. He creates a Mr. Krabs robot to trick SpongeBob into giving him the Krabby Patty secret formula. It's a silly setup, and a good amount's done with the idea. The literal hoops Plankton has to go through just to get SpongeBob to share the formula is funny. And once the real Mr. Krabs gets involved, SpongeBob's test in figuring out which one's fake, humorously enough, has him convinced the robot's the real deal. His no-nonsense demeanor during this part's great too. Of course, Plankton's ultimately undone in the end, and even the way that happens is amusingly somewhat self-inflicted. Each character has a nice showing in this one. It's far from gut-busting, but overall an enjoyable episode.
Don't listen to him! I'm the real Mr. Krabs!
Don't listen to him. He's obviously a robot.
Number 32, Pressure. SpongeBob and Sandy quarrel over whether sea creatures or land creatures are better, leading to each trying their hand at surviving in the other's domain. I have a variety of feelings about this one. I like the general premise and the fairly engaging argument between her and several characters in the Krusty Krab. I like that several other perspectives are involved, and everyone feels a bit more lucid than usual in the discussion. I also love the moment where SpongeBob and friends go onto land, not only because them actually leaving the water is rarely done in the Golden Age, making it feel like something mysterious and taboo, but also the smart decision to portray them as charming real-life objects on sticks, cementing the difference between the two worlds in a significant and artistic way. Although it doesn't make the most sense that they don't struggle for a lack of water, considering how much that's already been established by now. With all that said, their argument over which kind of creature's better's remarkably petty, particularly for Sandy, who mostly instigates it. I know she's very competitive, but she doesn't strike me as so emotionally and mentally underdeveloped that she'd think she's better than other people, and certainly not so socially unaware as to say this right to their face. I guess it has to be this way for the setup to work, but she makes more irrational decisions than usual in this episode. Pressure's got some funny moments and standout visual gags, for a pleasant episode with a good message at the end that you can't be the best at everything, and that's perfectly okay.
What?
Number 31, Tea at the Tree Dome. Sandy's first episode and also her best one. Tea at the Tree Dome tackles the subject of air and what it does to sea creatures. I appreciate that Sandy's introduced so early in this series, and has her own episode dedicated to it. A squirrel from Texas living in an underwater dome who likes karates, an out there enough idea to warrant its own focus. But with that said, she clearly doesn't have a strong track record for episodes. It's not really her fault. The writers seem to struggle writing comedic situations around her, almost abandoning her altogether in the third season for how little she shows up there. But I appreciate the role she plays as SpongeBob's smart and strong friend, despite her antics rarely getting a laugh. Even this episode being her best showings not ranked well because of her, but because of the conflict she presents. SpongeBob's struggle for water, which is very funny, and both the line deliveries and animation deserve a lot of credit for how entertaining his desperation is to watch. All with pinky raised for maximum fanciness. Hey, props to him for trying his best. I also appreciate this episode for fleshing out the world and characters more. It even shows jellyfishing for the first time at the start. So yeah, Tea at the Tree Dome accomplishes a lot in its runtime for a very memorable episode, and unmistakably one of SpongeBob's most iconic.
That's not in. In!
Number 30, Jellyfish Jam. I know this episode doesn't have many jokes, or even much dialogue, but it's just entertaining for what it is. SpongeBob takes a jellyfish home and they dance, only the jellyfish likes dancing so much it never wants to stop, inviting friends and being so noisy it completely disrupts SpongeBob's life. Luring them back to their natural habitat through the melodic sounds of the oceans, a cute and clever payoff to the problem, and a nice melody at that. Let's be real though, it's got nothing on the rave track. I always loved seeing this episode because I got to listen to this music in particular, and the writers seem to know it's a jam since it plays through a large portion of the episode. Beyond that, the jellyfish are just cute, both in their musical obsession and how they bob around. Not so cute when they're being meanies to Gary, spraying him with jelly. Not nice. But yeah, while this episode could have more substance, it's an enjoyable watch with great music and a satisfying conclusion.
Hey now, that wasn't nice.
Number 29, Shanghai. This episode's formatted very strangely. It's slightly longer than your average episode, but not double length, and starts with a very short and pointless patchy segment. SpongeBob and Patrick become crewmates for the Flying Dutchman after he drops anchor on SpongeBob's house. But eventually, he grows tired of their foolishness and decides to eat them. The base premise, with the pair working for the Flying Dutchman's, solid. But they clearly struggled with the setup since the story's just sloppily dropped on them. Could the writers really not figure out a more elegant way to kick things off? But thankfully, once SpongeBob's on the ship, the rest of the episode's pretty amusing. SpongeBob and Patrick's incompetence plays well off the Flying Dutchman, and leads to several funny lines and moments. I like that Squidward's here too, but sadly it's just to be a punching bag, and I'm not a fan of the vegetarian equals hippie stereotype the story ends with. Shanghai ends up feeling a little conceptually undercooked, but as long as it provides enough laughs, I'm satisfied.
Of my ghostly ghost pirates!
Was that the signal? Okay, sorry, just do it again.
Number 28, Fun. Plankton, having failed again to get the Krabby Patty formula, feels like a loser, only for SpongeBob to want to befriend him and teach him the meaning of fun and friendship, believing that's what will really bring him happiness. Fun shows a sympathetic layer to Plankton. Significant character development can be really satisfying when done well, especially in a show like SpongeBob where it's a tremendous rarity. A villain showing depth of emotion and changing their ways, possibly even coming over to the same side as the quote-unquote good guys they've been facing all along's one of the most commonly praised forms of character growth in a lot of media. Plankton shows that he genuinely enjoys being SpongeBob's friend and doing things with him, to the point where Karen even has to remind him about taking the Krabby Patty formula. The fact that Plankton really is embracing his new friendship makes it all the more tragic that, of course, he betrays SpongeBob, abandons the friendship, and chooses evil in the end. It's no surprise that it ends this way, but that doesn't mean it's not frustrating. If Plankton was only pretending to enjoy the friendship the whole time, it'd be woefully generic. But for it to be something he's appreciating, only for it to fall apart due to the pressure from others, is unfortunate. But again, unsurprising for a show with almost no meaningful character progression, at least not in the first 3 seasons. Either way, this episode's nicely paced, has a good amount of humor and even wholesomeness, and gives us one of the most simple yet addicting songs to come out of this show with fun, making for an entertaining and memorable classic. Number 27, Your Shoes Untied. As the Season 2 opener, Your Shoes Untied immediately shows an improved level of humor compared to Season 1, with a fair amount of funny jokes and moments throughout the episode. You feel the faster pace, see the more expressive reactions, and creativity filling it out, and I think these changes are all for the better. SpongeBob's forgotten how to tie his shoes, and keeps struggling while trying to find someone who can remind him how. It's a fine premise for an episode that does plenty with it.
Hold on though, he tied his shoes in rock bottom. Inconsistency.
I can overlook this one, but funnily enough, this episode sets up its own inconsistency we'll tackle later. That's far more problematic. The Loop-de-Loop song's a charming capstone to a nice, light episode that shows well the comedic shift Season 2 brings, for a whole new level of entertainment.
You're gonna have to not do that.
Number 26, SpongeBob Meets the Strangler. SpongeBob tattles on the Strangler to the police, who ends up escaping and pretending to be SpongeBob's bodyguard, so he can get closer and strangle him in private. But SpongeBob, being himself, drives him crazy every step of the way. This one's got quite the tonal shift early on. At first it seems like it's going in the direction of SpongeBob fearing the Strangler and trying to avoid him, but once he unknowingly recruits the Strangler as his bodyguard, it shifts to SpongeBob feeling reassured, and becomes about him accidentally tormenting this guy instead. An appreciated change if you ask me. I'm a much bigger fan of SpongeBob having the higher ground in his dynamics through ignorance, rather than being a punching bag for someone else. Not that there aren't some episodes that do that well. This is a pretty fun time for just how over the top it is, with the Strangler never getting a moment alone thanks to constant parties and SpongeBob taking forever to do his errands. It's pleasant to watch the Strangler's torment since it feels deserved considering his malintent. A simple structure but executed well here, and thankfully things stay light and wacky. So yeah, a funny episode with a memorable premise and creative punchlines.
Get your feet out of my eye sockets!
I'm trying, but my cleats are stuck in your corneas!
Number 25, One Krabs Trash. Mr. Krabs sells SpongeBob a soda drinking hat, only to find out it's worth a ton of money, so he tricks SpongeBob into thinking it's cursed and has to fend off skeleton zombies to get it back. That's quite the original story. Very creative. Mr. Krabs' cheapness is a bit more entertaining than usual here, since he doesn't get away with much. And I like the ridiculously named Smitty Werbin Jaegerman Jensen character turning out to be a real person in the end, though the skeleton army's dealt with a little too easily. The ending doesn't make the most sense. A warehouse of the hats is discovered so they're no longer worth anything, yet the people who are gonna buy it are still just waiting for Mr. Krabs and laugh when he brings it up. Why are any of you still here then? I know, silly thing to get hung up on. Either way, this is one of Mr. Krabs' better episodes, with an amusing progression and memorable imagery.
Am I really gonna defile this grave for money? Of course I am!
Number 24, Doing Time. Mrs. Puff gets sent to jail for SpongeBob's reckless driving, but loves the fact she's finally away from him. SpongeBob and Patrick, however, continue to try breaking her out, until the end shows it was all just in her imagination. Okay. As pointless as it is in the end, this episode's pretty fun. Mrs. Puff's enthusiasm for being in jail is amusing, and it's got a good amount of creative gags. Not a very laugh-out-loud episode, but a compelling setup, at least until it's revealed to all be meaningless. Honestly, a fair amount of SpongeBob episodes end in an inconclusive way, but thankfully the stories don't usually suffer for it. If anything, it lets the viewer imagine what might have happened, giving the impression the wacky hijinks don't stop when you're not watching. Regardless, I like seeing Mrs. Puff in a new kind of environment. Doing Time could go farther with stronger material, but it's still a super solid episode with a nice sense of humor and interesting ideas.
I like it here. These are my people.
Number 23, New Student Starfish. Patrick joined SpongeBob at boating school, only for SpongeBob to get punished for his poor behavior, leading to them fighting until making up at the end. I like seeing them try new ideas with the boating school, and getting Patrick involved is a fun move that results in several comedic moments and lines. I'm a little surprised to see just how wholesome the ending to this one is, with them working together to save a baby bird's life. A fair amount of stories end with someone struggling or in an unfortunate situation, so I appreciate that this one, despite having them quarrel, also has them come to a sensible and warm reconciliation. If you've ever been blamed for the misbehavior of a friend, it's a decently relatable story, with well-paced ups and downs and more than a few good jokes.
As if I really look like this!
Bro, it's insane that they included the poop. Number 22, Naughty Nautical Neighbors. Another standout Season 1 episode. Squidward's nasty tricks cause SpongeBob and Patrick to stop being friends, only for them both to then want to be his friend, who drive him out of his mind in a matter of minutes. The two most important qualities for a good episode, funny humor and character interactions, are on point here. All three characters have a good showing with several humorous lines and moments. Conceptually, this is a pretty simple episode too, so it's impressive that it has so many memorable scenes. The bubble whispers, Squidward choking on a fork, the gang's all here, it's pretty packed. It's really funny how much Squidward savors having ruined their relationship, like he so doesn't care. Look at how happy he is! Of course, he quickly suffers the consequences, but the fact that he does effectively get them back to being friends shows he can be pretty competent with social relations, and take some responsibility for his actions. Sure, his house explodes afterwards, but he did cause all this trouble in the first place. Yeah, this one's nicely paced, funny, has some great reactions, and shows the dynamic of these three characters perfectly.
So this is what I find, huh? My best friend and my ex-best friend and rubber bath toys!
Number 21, Squidward the Unfriendly Ghost. A wax figure of Squidward is accidentally destroyed by SpongeBob and Patrick, who think it's the real deal. So Squidward pretends to be a ghost and has them serve him as punishment, until they later try sending him to the great beyond, unwilling to believe he's not really dead. That's an A+ setup for an episode with a lot of funny moments. SpongeBob and Patrick's panic trying to keep the wax Squidward together is especially humorous, and the way the story progresses through phases where different characters take turns tormenting each other makes for compelling pacing. I appreciate that Squidward doesn't go too far bossing them around, since it could easily turn this into a mean-spirited episode. Not that he's particularly nice here, but it's well balanced to keep things lighthearted. The entertaining interactions and clever punchlines back up the overall concept, for easily one of Season 1's best.
Here lies Squidward. You may not remember him, but he was the one. Oh, hi, Squidward. Does this look deep enough?
Number 20, Graveyard Shift. A very fun episode. SpongeBob and Squidward are working the night shift at the Krusty Krab, now open 24 hours a day, where Squidward tells SpongeBob a made-up tale of the hash-slinging slasher, with a series of events following, making them believe the stories come true. While Scaredy Pants is an overtly Halloween episode, and a solid one at that, Graveyard Shift fits the season well too, and in many ways gets the job done better. It's a more engaging story to start, with funnier humor and a better build-up of spooky atmosphere. Squidward takes a bit long telling his story, but this episode's generally nicely paced, drawing the viewer into the scenario with some very amusing reactions. The ending's cute too, with the slasher just being a guy looking for a job. Yeah, this is a great episode. An entertaining concept that's well executed, for another Golden Age classic.
For the Krusty Krab!
Number 19, Employee of the Month. SpongeBob, anxious about losing the Employee of the Month award to Squidward, accidentally encourages him to want it out of spite, leading to them competing for it into sleep-deprived lunacy. I'm actually shocked this one ranked as well as it did, since it starts out rather tame, but escalates fantastically as it goes on. Once the paranoia kicks in, it's a complete blast to the end, getting funnier the more unhinged they become, with a fair bit of creativity along the way. It's rare to see SpongeBob act so antagonistically to someone else, to the point of even deliberately trying to sabotage Squidward, leading to another uncommon sight: SpongeBob and Squidward engaging each other on the same mental and emotional level. It's really fun to see them on the same page in competence and deception, and it's these interactions that make this one so worthwhile. It's not often an episode only escalates as it goes on, but man do I love it when that happens, landing Employee of the Month as the second best episode of the first season.
Look, Mr. Krabs, clean floors!
Clean tables, Mr. Krabs!
Number 18, The Algae's Always Greener. The best Plankton episode and also the Season 3 opener. It's a strong start with a creative premise. Plankton uses a machine to swap lives with Mr. Krabs, only to be driven mad by the demands and craziness of those around him. Kind of like SB-129, this is one of those setups that's so out there you can't wait to see what they do with it. And thankfully, The Algae's Always Greener fares a lot better than that episode did, incorporating the humorous dynamics of the Krusty Krab around Plankton. It's easy to see why he'd be over it so quickly. Plankton's role as Mr. Krabs means his usual anger is also toned down, leading to more interesting interactions between him and everyone else, which is great since it results in a lot of good jokes and memorable lines. This episode's actually pretty impressive for taking on an ambitious storyline and managing it all in 11 minutes without feeling rushed, for a uniquely entertaining glimpse into another reality.
Because that patty is for the customer, sir.
The customer? I'll boil the customer in hot oil and I'll rip out his...
Number 17, Valentine's Day. For a somewhat understated episode, Valentine's Day has a lot to offer. First off, how often do you see cartoon holiday specials about Valentine's Day? And second, how often do you see Valentine's Day themed episodes for shows entirely centered around platonic relationships? SpongeBob gives Valentine's to everyone he knows, saving the best surprise for Patrick, but after unforeseen obstacles get in the way, Patrick goes on a rampage, feeling unloved and forgotten. A wonderful storyline with emotions that keep your attention. Patrick so enthusiastic about the big gift SpongeBob's promised him, only to be given a handshake. Why on earth would that be plan B? Leading to Patrick's entire demeanor turning into quiet anger. His perpetual frown's hilarious, and once his frenzy breaks out, he spews a lot of funny lines. I really appreciate that for a Valentine's themed episode, it focuses on the love and care between two friends in particular. Too often, affectionate relationships are forced into a romantic label. So I'm very glad to see this episode promote open, loving affection in a platonic way. That healthy message really lifts it up. But either way, it's a tight episode with some great character moments, not to mention the fantastic Valentine's Carnival setting. This is definitely the best episode centered around Patrick in the Golden Age. He's in plenty more we've yet to discuss, but in more supplementary roles, or as a dual protagonist with SpongeBob. Regardless, this is my pick for the number 1 best episode of the first season. Number 16, Idiot Box. SpongeBob and Patrick play inside a box using their imagination, which turns out is a surprisingly audible experience, convincing Squidward there must be some trick to it, driving himself mad trying to figure out what's really going on. And it's here we finally see the base concept of Bubble Stand and the paper, that of Squidward not understanding something SpongeBob's enamored with, executed at its best. For a simple setup, they get a lot of entertainment out of this one. with the pair's usual carefree attitude amusingly contrasting against Squidward's skeptical sourness. The punchlines are a lot stronger than in Bubble Stand, and Squid's descent into madness is a lot more believable than in the paper, for the ideal execution of this kind of plotline. I like how over the top the sound design is while they're imagining in the box. It's so hilariously believable, no wonder Squidward loses it. Yeah, this is a really good time. Idiot Box breezes right by, and even how it ends is clever. Another great episode thanks to funny and refined character dynamics.
Squidward's such a jerk.
And with that, we are entering the top 15. The absolute best episodes of the first 3 seasons with enough humor and personality for me to wholeheartedly recommend. Number 15, Dying for Pie, a stellar SpongeBob Squidward episode with a compelling dilemma. Squidward buys a pie for SpongeBob for Employee Brotherhood Day, unaware it's actually a bomb, and upon finding out, spends the rest of the day with him so his final moments are filled with happiness. That's one heck of a good setup, and leads to a buffet of funny moments. Squidward's conscience shows up again here, and it's as appreciated as always. He wants to ensure SpongeBob has the time of his life before it's over, and signs on to every stupid activity he wants to do with him. The activities themselves could have had more time dedicated to them, but it's capstoned well by the final payoff of SpongeBob not having eaten the pie, accidentally tripping and throwing it in Squid's face, blowing up all of Bikini Bottom. The sheer ludicrous nature of this episode keeps it creative and entertaining. Dying for Pie is an engaging story with enough silly humor to ensure it's a genuine classic.
You had to kill him. The boy cries, you sweat her tears, and you kill him.
Number 14, Frankendoodle. SpongeBob finds a magic pencil that makes drawings come to life, creating Doodle Bob, a drawn version of himself who takes the pencil and uses its powers to do as he pleases, eventually trying to eliminate SpongeBob altogether and take his place. I gotta give it up for this one. That's one of the most original plotlines I've seen in the Golden Age, and makes for a captivating time. I've always loved the power to make drawings come to life. Your imagination's the limit with an idea like this, but when you have about 11 minutes, there's only so much the writers could accomplish with it. But I like what they managed. The living drawings are eerie for how uncanny they look around everything else, as well as the creepy way they speak and move, which I of course totally love. Doodlebob's akin to a monster on the loose, violent, quick to react, and hard to stop, even if he is a little cute. Look, he made his own pineapple. He's a lot of fun to watch, and results in a very visually compelling experience, with a lot of creative gags. Even the way Doodlebob's defeated is satisfyingly clever. I wouldn't consider Frankendoodle a big episode for laughs like a lot of other top tiers, but it's still very amusing, with an absorbing concept that's executed wonderfully.
Squidward's answering the door, and...
He's beating up Squidward!
Number 13, Artist Unknown. Squidward starts teaching an art class, and his only student SpongeBob, who shows a natural mastery for it, and creates a beautiful statue. An art collector then stops by who's led to believe Squidward's responsible, but after a mishap that destroys it, Squidward encourages SpongeBob to make something else. Only his own unhelpful teachings removed SpongeBob's natural talent. This is a very humorous storyline. Squidward, smug as always in his artistic know-how, only for SpongeBob to effortlessly trump his abilities in his usual unassuming way. It's well-paced with a lot of amusing punchlines at Squidward's expense, likely for acting superior and manipulative. How appropriate that his misguided approach leads SpongeBob in a specifically detrimental way. It's a great message to show that not everyone should approach the creative process in the same way, and usually it's best to do what comes naturally. Yeah, this episode's tightly put together, funny, has an awesome setup, and delightfully executed finish, with Squidward being his own undoing.
First I draw this head, then I erased some of the more detailed features, and 1, 2, 3, a circle, thingy.
Number 12, The Bully. You'd think I'd hate this episode after I complained about bullying with I'm Your Biggest Fanatic. But surprisingly, they wrote a bully story that's actually very funny. A new student named Flats joins SpongeBob's boating school, and quickly tells him he's gonna kick his butt. So SpongeBob panics and tries to find a way out of it. A story that could have easily crossed a line into too mean-spirited. Typically, when you see bullies in media, they always have their mean moment, where they do something intentionally cruel to someone innocent and get away with it. But Flats doesn't get anything like that. He's comically cruel in his intention, but the reason this episode gets away with not being too malicious is because he doesn't actually manage to beat SpongeBob up at all. SpongeBob, being what he is, doesn't feel a thing from Flats' punches, making him look like a fool in the end. There's a lot to laugh at here between the funny lines and just how over the top Flats is in being an unapologetic bully. He's got a really distinct design as a flounder, enough to be a very memorable side character, and again, only works in being a total jerk because he doesn't get what he wants. Otherwise, this episode would be frustrating. Who knew I'd like an episode centered around bullying, but in the end, it's all about the vibes. And aside from a few nasty but small jokes, the bully keeps things light enough so SpongeBob's not the only one breathing a sigh of relief.
Wow, I'm touched. I'll have to remember that when I'm kicking your butt. Those flowers for me?
Number 11, Squid on Strike. Have you realized I'm a fan of the SpongeBob-Squidward dynamic yet? I've always liked this episode. SpongeBob and Squidward, fed up with Mr. Krabs' cheapness, go on strike for more respect, but SpongeBob doesn't really understand what striking means, and ends up doing far more harm to the cause than good. A straightforward premise that leads to some great moments between the two. SpongeBob innocently wanting to help, despite failing horribly, makes it hard to get mad at him. Mr. Krabs' cheapness can often cross a line into off-putting, but it's balanced perfectly in this one, so his unreasonable demands are actually quite humorous. Surprisingly, the writers even touch upon a harsh truth about how strikers are typically received. The fact that people usually won't care when it doesn't affect them. Of course, this show's not here to tackle the subject seriously. It keeps the focus on comedy. It could maybe be a bit more filled out with antics, but the simplicity of the setup allows the characters' unique personalities to bounce off each other in a really appealing way.
Squidward! 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 Squidward!
Number 10, No Weenies Allowed. SpongeBob wants to enter a club called the Salty Spittoon to join Sandy, and his own physical inability gets him labeled as a weenie, so he's repeatedly denied entry. A spectacular example of a bare-bones premise done right, with plenty of funny and creative jokes. I like how immediately distinct and memorable the Salty Spittoon and its guard Reg are, as well as Weenie Hut Jr.'s, an adorable diner where even the side characters are fun to watch. I wish we saw more of these two nerdy weenies, and I also love the decision to have the place run by a robot for some reason. And how about this one guy that looks just like SpongeBob but with fancy hair, appearing right after it's clear SpongeBob's going to buy a wig to sneak in? That's just excellent. They do a lot in this episode despite the kind of slow start with the karate at Goo Lagoon, but it's a strong one, and ends on a spectacular payoff to ensure another clear-cut SpongeBob classic.
What about that guy?
Don't be silly. He's not bothering anybody. I mean, not like that guy.
Who, me?
Number 9, Can You Spare a Dime? This one gives us a unique dynamic between SpongeBob and Squidward, at least for part of it. Squidward quits the Krusty Krab after Mr. Krabs accuses him of stealing his first dime, but he's quickly left out on the street penniless, so SpongeBob invites him to stay at his place to get his life together, only for Squidward to become entitled and take full advantage. For a part of this story, Squidward shows genuine appreciation and tolerance for SpongeBob. A huge rarity in the first 3 seasons. Of course, it's short-lived to get to the real conflict. Squidward completely living off SpongeBob, and demanding everything he wants from him. Even considering how sour Squidward's personality can be, this is him at maybe his nastiest in the Golden Age. But it also gives us one of its funniest scenes as well. SpongeBob at his wit's end is hilarious, and does so much to lift this episode up. I just love how lucid he is when making his point to Squidward to get a job. His passive-aggressive lines and reactions are hysterical. I wish they showed this side of his character more often. I could see not being a fan of this episode if you can't stand how Squidward acts, but that's what makes SpongeBob letting him have it so satisfying. If anything bothers me about this one, it's the rather hard to believe time jump and details. Supposedly Squidward's been out of work for months? Did the Krusty Krab hire someone else? How did SpongeBob not know Squidward lost his house? Whatever. None of this matters. In fact, this episode gets a lot done in 11 minutes. It's a fun time thanks to an absorbing scenario and emotions.
Thanks. I'm gonna go look for one so I can stop mooching off my friends and they can get back to their lives.
Number 8. No free rides. Mrs. Puff, tired of being on the receiving end of SpongeBob's poor driving, passes him out of exhaustion, only for guilt to take over when he's gifted a boat, leading to her attempting to steal it away in the night. The best Mrs. Puff episode, not that she has all that many, but a delightful watch the whole way through. The extra credit scene needs to be highlighted for being another of the funniest full scenes of the Golden Age. The line reads, facial expressions, and overall pacing are spot on in this one, and it's not without plenty of creative visual gags. That honestly covers it though. It's just a funny story with a lot of good jokes. If I had to find any criticism, the chase scene's not as amusing as the first half, but it's still plenty entertaining. Ensuring no free rides is a surefire classic.
No, don't look! It's not ready.
It's so simple! Only 10 words! What I learned in boating school is blankety, blankety, blank!
Number 7, Just One Bite. Another all-time classic with a really good premise. Squidward's never tried a Krabby Patty. I have footage that says otherwise, but that's what they're going with. So SpongeBob insists that Squid tries one, sure that he'll like it. Squid takes a bite but pretends to hate it out of stubbornness, only to then desperately try to get another without SpongeBob finding out. It's a really fun story with a lot of hilarious reactions from both of them. The animation nails Squidward's desperation, and I can't forget to shout out the smuggest face SpongeBob's ever made when he discovers the truth. There's not much more to say about this one either. It's a really well executed idea that just feels complete. It wouldn't hurt for maybe a few more laugh out loud jokes, but it's got a great sense of humor that stays entertaining all the way to the end. Of all the Golden Age episodes, this one makes me want a Krabby Patty more than ever. Number 6, Chocolate with Nuts. I'm impressed with the quality of writing in this one. Chocolate with Nuts is a densely hilarious episode with so many good jokes and memorable moments. SpongeBob and Patrick want to be entrepreneurs, so they go door to door selling chocolate bars, but struggle to make a sale. Another simple setup that's just so elegantly executed. The humor's on point and backs up the shallow premise perfectly. Each customer interaction has its own punchline, and the final customer, this seemingly crazy yelling man, buys all their bars in one go, and they have a fancy night out, so it even has a warm and fulfilling ending. I remember loving this episode as a kid, and it still holds up spectacularly today, and it really makes me want a chocolate bar.
It'll keep your face from getting any uglier, just in time.
Number 5, Something Smells. SpongeBob eats a ketchup, onion, and peanut plant sundae. It's so nasty and stupid, but really funny. It gives him such bad-smelling breath, almost everyone runs away from him, and Patrick convinces him it's because he's ugly. A 10 out of 10 setup, packed with good jokes. This is a top-tier classic, with loads of memorable bits. The ugly barnacle story, look at it, the parade of civilian reactions to the disgusting breath with their faces getting fried on the spot. The comedy's so dense and really well paced. It even gets pretty dark, like these two fish who willingly willingly bite a fish hook in response to the smell? How about the guy who crashes his boat? Or the two fish in the theater who seemingly die on the spot? Something Smells certainly got an edge, but it all contributes to its masterful execution, giving you a lot to laugh at for a really strong episode.
No one would want a friend as ugly as I am.
Sure they would. It makes them feel better about the way they look.
Number 4, Nasty Patty. SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs feed a disgusting Krabby Patty to who they think is a fake health inspector. Only it turns out he was real and might have died, so they take him out to bury him while doing whatever they can to avoid being caught. What a premise. It's actually crazy how dark this is when you really think about it. They think they killed this guy who did nothing wrong and tote his body all over the place, while only thinking of their own well-being. And my god, does it make for an entertaining episode. The panic between the pair after realizing what happened, SpongeBob's complete lack of cool dealing with the cops. The two play off each other beautifully here for a hilarious situation with superb line reads and reactions. Notable that Krabs' best episode has very little to do with his cheapness, which is usually the focal point of his stories. And I think Nasty Patty shows his out-for-himself sides a more compelling use of the character. This one's got a nice atmosphere too, and is pretty appropriate for the Halloween season. Worth calling out the Nasty Patty itself for how frickin' revolting it looks. They nailed this one, and I love this episode. It's an icon for all the right reasons. Excellent setup, humor, character interactions, and pacing all in one, making Nasty Patty another Golden Age classic.
Ice is in the freezer, right?
There is no ice. There's never been any ice. Ice is just a myth.
Number 3, Squid's Day Off. Only 2 episodes into the second season, and already they made one that tops anything from the first. Squid's Day Off sees Squidward assume temporary management duties at the Krusty Krab, leaving SpongeBob in charge of everything so he can take a day off. A simple setup and superbly executed for one of the most hilarious descents into madness Squidward goes through. Even funnier because it's entirely fueled in his own mind, since SpongeBob doesn't do a thing to cause or feed into it. I love SpongeBob's innocence in all this, and makes Squid's reactions to him all the more hysterical. If you've ever worried about something going wrong in your absence, it's a pretty easy situation to relate to. The wild faces and reactions are comedic gold, and have you finished those errands still lives rent-free in my mind. I especially love that Squidward thinks SpongeBob's so incapable that he doesn't know how to make change, and SpongeBob's reaction to this is just perfection. Squid's Day Off's an incredibly tight script, well-paced, memorable, and extremely funny, for another stellar classic of the Golden Age.
Forcing me to come back here every time you mess up.
But I haven't.
Okay, maybe you haven't messed up yet, but you will. You will.
Number 2, Band Geeks. Even I have to give it up for this one. It's not easy to top what Band Geeks provides. Well-paced and entertaining, it feels like the culmination of SpongeBob SquarePants. Squidward, desperate to prove his petty old schoolmate wrong, puts together and conducts a band of Bikini Bottom citizens for the Bubble Bowl halftime show. Of course, it proves difficult for many reasons, until his band shows up at the end and blows everyone away. While not the funniest episode of SpongeBob, several we've already covered have more laughs in fact, Band Geeks still has a great sense of humor, but that's not what makes it such an excellent episode. First off, it features basically the entire main cast of the show, and even if some don't say all that much, their unique personalities play off each other in fun ways, while all working towards a single goal. Going through the Golden Age, we've seen Squidward as the target of so much pain and torment. Sure, many times it's been his own sour actions and attitude that's caused them, but here he's doing his best to create a band and teach his community, because he really doesn't want to be seen like a loser this time. He gives up once he's had enough of everyone's inability to work together, and resigns himself to humiliation. But the band shows up and crushes it, playing Sweet Victory with everyone doing their part to complete applause, sending Squidward over the moon in a blissful moment for them all to share. It's such a tremendously heartwarming satisfying ending. Squidward, lifted up, the character usually dumped on whenever given the chance. But here, when push comes to shove, the community comes together and is there for him, granting him the biggest win he could imagine. It's a moving and beautiful payoff, with a nice song too. I think this is one of the most popular and acclaimed episodes of the entire series. And if true, it's for good reason. All of Band Geek's components come together to represent this show and its characters perfectly, making it a hard episode to beat, but one managed to surpass it.
Flag twirlers, let's move! Come on, move!
Number 1. Club SpongeBob. For me, the funniest episode is the best episode. A brilliantly hilarious premise executed to perfection and packed with killer punchlines. SpongeBob, Patrick, and Squidward get lost in the wild after Squidward mocks their secret club. Unsure how to escape, SpongeBob and Patrick follow the wishes of the Magic Conch, a pull-string toy with answers that Squidward finds foolish, only for believers to be rewarded while he gets nothing. I love this episode more today than I ever have. SpongeBob and Patrick's simple-minded positivity plays off Squidward spectacularly in this one, for non-stop funny lines and reactions. The Magic Conch itself's the icing on the cake for how ridiculous the storyline is, but ensures Squidward's nasty, smug behavior's never rewarded. The ending twist rocks too, with an explorer showing up seemingly to save them, but is also just listening to a magic conch shell, ending on them all doing nothing again. It's an exceptional showing all around. Club SpongeBob's the SpongeBob-Squidward dynamic better than ever, firmly cementing this as my pick for the number 1 best episode of SpongeBob's Golden Age.
I'll have you know that I am a member of over 20 different exclusive clubs all across the sea bottom.
What did he say?
I don't know. Something about his nose?
Could I have something to eat?
No.
Can't you say anything else but no?
Try asking again.
Can I have something to eat?
No.
And there you have it, all 117 episodes of SpongeBob SquarePants Golden Age ranked and reviewed. But we're not done. Let's talk about the first 3 seasons. It's pretty surprising that out of the 41 Season 1 episodes, only 2 are centered around Mr. Krabs. Even Plankton has more. Revisiting the first season over 20 years later, it unfortunately doesn't have many praiseworthy episodes today. Even a lot of its classics lack enough good humor to back them up. And aside from a handful of episodes, there's just not much reason to go back to this season. I will say the relaxing, somewhat cozy vibe of Season 1's something to appreciate that you don't get with 2 and 3, but its tamer comedic senses means it's often just not entertaining enough. It still contributes so much to SpongeBob's legacy, with dozens of iconic episodes and memes, but is a very noticeable first season in trying to find its footing. Season 2 feels different to 1 in a lot of ways. The writing's tighter, the animation's snappier, expressions are dialed up, creativity's dialed up, pacing's more engaging, the timing on jokes is funnier, and even the visuals are more compelling, thanks in part to more vivid coloration. This all combines for a greater level of comedic potential and success. That is, when it works out. Not every episode from Season 2's firing on all cylinders. In fact, it's a lot more hit or miss than Season 1. A handful of Season 2 episodes ranked higher than anything from 1, but the reverse is true too. For a season with much higher highs, but also lower lows. It's still a nice step up from Season 1, since it can be so much funnier a lot more often, with several of its episodes exemplifying the Golden Age at its finest. Which is also pretty true for Season 3, an interesting one to talk about. The writers basically gave up on Sandy in Season 3, since out of 37 episodes, not a single one centered around her, and she doesn't even appear all that much otherwise. This season starts off incredibly strong, with a ton of all-time classic episodes, and only a few duds here and there. But as the season goes on, this slowly reverses, and towards the end is mostly made up of lacking or straight-up bad episodes. I've mentioned this a bit already, but several stories start feeling phoned in. Character flanderization, an over-reliance on slapstick, and other very basic level humor. For a feeling of reduced passion precision in episode design by the end. Rewatching this today, I'm not surprised I lost interest around this period, because even now, the creative shifts still noticeable, but all in all, it offers about as much good and bad as Season 2. Which brings me to my final thoughts on the Golden Age. Despite the fact that there are more episodes I wouldn't recommend than I would, a good deal of Golden Age SpongeBob's still worth checking out today, and I'm glad to have covered my thoughts on each episode here. It's crazy to think how much from these seasons still sticks with us now, and having refreshed my opinions on this show, I know which episodes to revisit and which to avoid. I clearly like the SpongeBob-Squidward dynamic the most. 8 out of my top 15 episodes are centered around Squidward, who's almost definitely my favorite character, with SpongeBob, who's in a close second, as the focus of the other 7. Alternatively, episodes featured around Gary and Sandy, and even many of Mr. Krabs, ranked poorly with only a few notable highlights. But let me know how you feel. What's your favorite episode from SpongeBob's Golden Age? What's your least favorite episode? Let me know in a comment, or check out my Discord and we can talk about it, video games, and other stuff like that there. It's a fantastic community of supporting and respectful people, and you are welcome. Links in the description. And if you liked this video and happen to like Paper Mario, check out my video ranking all the chapters. I got plans for more rankings too, so if you want to see more, subscribe to the channel and maybe consider becoming a member to show support. It helps a ton, and you'll even get cute meowlin emojis you can use during live streams. Here on YouTube every Wednesday night Eastern Time, and sometimes on weekends too. Here I am playing Mario Kart 7 for the first time.
Explain yourself. Actually, explain yourself. I don't even understand. Did you see it? I have 3 red shells around me. I have 3 red shells around me, and yet Wario does something that hits me and gets rid of multiple of my shells, and then he just keeps fucking scooting. What the fuck happened? What happened?
With all of that said, thank you so much for watching, and look forward to more videos. Be well everyone, and I'll see you next time.